All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with us here. So like all the other usual live streams, we'll go for about 2 hours or so. We'll give priority answering to anyone that does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member here with the green usernames. They always get priority answering there. And so we'll just get right into it here. So I see we have a bunch of people have already joined in. Thanks so much everyone for joining in. I see we have Jordan, Brian, Danny, Troy Car Guy, Anthony, Vishal, Cars, Grand, so many others, Cam, Good Sick, Raphael. Hope everyone's doing great. And so Jordan says, awesome channel. I appreciate that, Jordan. Hope you're doing well. And Jordan also says, first song on the actual car radio anyone remembers. That's like a digging way deep back in the memories there. I don't know. It's hard to say for me, honestly. I don't know. My parents didn't listen to a lot of like normal pop music, honestly. So probably nothing normal that I can remember from early in my childhood days on the radio there. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I grew up with a lot of neighbors listening to hip hop and stuff. So a lot of the like Biggie, Tupac, like that kind of stuff. Honestly, like hearing a lot of that stuff in the early '90s in my neighborhood is probably the first thing. But in the car, I'm not sure. My parents definitely wouldn't have had that on, but unfortunately. But yeah, I think those are probably honestly like old like '90s, early '90s rap is. I think part of why I actually love like real rap, in my opinion. You know, not the more modern hip hop stuff, which is good in its own way, but like old school rap, I think is probably the first thing that kind of imprinted on my brain in a lot of ways. Yeah, but great question, Jordan. I'm curious anyone else's first actual radio songs there they can remember. That's a cool question. Danny says, hello, everyone. I have some exciting news. I took my first driving lesson last Thursday and it went well, but I did pick up a bad habit from mom, which I have a heavy right foot, but hey, what can I do? He says, my next one is this Tuesday. Well, good luck with the driving. And, right foot is okay as long as it's, not too heavy. Everything in moderation, be, responsible with your use of that right foot. But, I think that most 16-year-olds, especially 16-year-old boys, I think, that is something that we tend to do and, just try and be safe. But congrats on the driving lesson. That's awesome. And Trent Car Guy says greetings as well. And Vishal and Cars asks, how's your week? It was a good week. It's always very busy in October for me, both just with like all the fun like Northeast fall stuff, the pumpkin picking and all these types of things you can do. But then also work wise, it was a very busy week. I will be filming some stuff on a little work trip at one point this week coming up. And so anytime I have a trip, it's like my whole prior week is overloaded, because it's like, well, now I have to film the press cars a little sooner than I usually have to film, and everything just gets shuffled around and ends up, making my workload way heavier. So October is gonna be a little crazy. You're gonna be working a lot of nights, and unfortunately, actually, I even had to work Saturday, which I usually avoid working weekends as much as I possibly can. But I actually had to go and film car reviews yesterday, so didn't love that. But it is what it is. Gotta keep feeding the beast and keep up with it all. So that was my week. It's been a busy one, but it's still fun in many ways. So at least that's, it's not bad work necessarily. And I see we have our first couple of super chats of the night. So thanks so much, Jordan, for the first super chat. He says, Elon Musk extravaganza, auto taxi, auto bus, right? Yeah, the cyber cab and robo bus or robo van or whatever. Yeah, I didn't watch the presentations, honestly. I was too busy. And to me, that stuff is all vaporware that, maybe we will see. I mean, even Elon, I think, is finally being realistic or somewhat realistic, saying 2026, I think, for the cyber cab. And so it wasn't even worth my time to watch the presentation. Honestly, I will catch the highlights and, cover them briefly in next week's weekly update, because unfortunately that was after I'd already filmed everything for this weekly update, which was already one of the longest ones I've ever done anyway. So couldn't have probably edited it regardless, but, Yeah, it's interesting. We've talked a lot in past live streams about autonomous cars and where I see that going and all that. But I still think the bottom line is liability. Who's going to be liable? Drivers or riders aren't going to want to be liable, at least, especially in like that cybercab. There's no steering wheel, there's no pedals, there's no way for you to take control or do anything. So certainly shouldn't fall on the rider. Is Tesla going to, take every lawsuit for every time that those things bump into anybody? Um, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but I think that's ultimately the biggest problem is who's going to be, left holding the bill and who's going to be okay with that. No one's going to be okay with that. So, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I mean, we will see. It seems like they really are going for this autonomous future in a lot of ways. And it seems like the tech is slowly but surely getting there little by little. And so it's just going to come down to, you know, if they can figure out the legal hurdles, in my opinion. I haven't heard really anyone else really talking about that, but to me, that's still the big unanswered question that no one seems to be concerned about, or at least not publicly talking about. I don't know. So, but yeah, it's all very fun science fiction for now. We'll see if he makes it a reality. But thanks again, Jordan, for the super chat. And Charlottetown Spud, thank you so much for a super chat. They say here in Canada, the new Z has a $4,000 discount. Also noticed a low mileage 23Z performance going $20,000 cheaper than a new 24. Do you think in 3 years these will be a sports car bargain? That's a great question. I actually did see one this week, the third one I've seen this year. I've been keeping count because they're such rare sights. I've seen far more Ferraris and Lamborghinis this year than I've seen of any of the Z's. So anyway, I mean, as far as your question, I didn't realize there was discounts out there finally, but that's great to hear. And if they are, I mean, yeah, if it's 20 grand cheaper already, I mean, that sounds like a sports car bargain today. 3 years from now, absolutely. I mean, it's really going to just come down to also, yeah, how Nissan plays it, how things progress. I think the smart thing for Nissan to do if they actually want to juice demand is pair the base car with a limited slip diff. Literally, like for 2 grand, $2,500, whatever you want to do, throw in the limited slip diff from the performance. Because I don't think everyone necessarily needs the Brembos. I don't think they need all the other performance stuff, which is a lot of it's just like luxury stuff. It's not actually that much performance stuff on there. I think people just don't want to be hampered down by a traction control in place of a limited slip diff, especially in the wintertime or anyone who's trying to daily drive in any kind of weather. And I said this from the very beginning when they first launched the Z. I'm like, it's a huge miss to not do a base car with an LSD. Toyota GRD6, BRZ give you an LSD for free. Mazda, it keeps it out of their absolute base one, but they have a bunch of different trims to choose from. It's not just an everything or nothing kind of thing with the Miata. You can get a club for give you that middle ground and give you that limited slip diff. So they shot themselves in the foot with that. And I mean, I thought pricing was terrible whenever it first came out, unless you're okay with no limited slip for that 40 grand car. That is a good one, but I think 50 grand makes no sense. And I'm not the only one saying this. Lots of others have said the same thing. Why not get Mustang? Why not get a Supra or any of these other things? M2, honestly, with some of these prices these days, it's like you might as well just pick up a lightly used M2 or something. So it just never made sense. So if they're actually starting to drop well and people truly don't even want them on the used market, they're that cheap, then absolutely that would be a solid value. It's to me, it's a good car. Like in a vacuum, if we put pricing off to the side, I like the new Z. I think the styling's great. Obviously it's it's a very clear I don't want to say half-hearted attempt, because I think they did put a lot of passion into that car, but it's just not well executed. You can't carry over door panels with enthusiasts. They pick up on that kind of stuff. If we're talking about soccer mom cars or something, you can probably get away with a whole lot more carryover and just those types of things. But in when you're talking about enthusiasts, you can't get away with that stuff. You got to change that stuff. I don't care if you got to pull door panels or materials from an Altima, whatever. It's got to just not be the old Z. And there's so much of that car that is still the old Z. It's bad enough the stuff underneath is, but to have the stuff also on the outside, or on the outside and the inside, being carryover, it doesn't it just doesn't, fare well for those types of people. So I mean, yeah, if it was, I think if I were running Nissan and I were to price the Z right now, and I could, be in charge of new car pricing, to me, again, being fair and realizing what everything else is priced at in the market, I really think that it would be a more compelling car and really start to undercut. If you can get in at like 35 grand, then you're kind of competing pretty evenly with like a, EcoBoost performance pack, something like that. I think even though that has less horsepower, clearly, the Z's got 400 horsepower, but it's not even as tight as the EcoBoost Mustang, honestly, in some ways. So I think if you're trying to undercut Mustang, which is the big seller, that's what everyone wants. Everyone in that segment wants Mustang sales numbers. So you got to go after Mustang. And in that case, that means you have to say 35 grand, especially for the open diff car, 37.5 maybe for the limited slip diff one, that performance pack one, 45. That's kind of the upper limit, I think, for that, because once you get to 45, you can get yourself a nice Mustang GT with 480 horsepower, a V8, more tech. And even though that does have also the same problem of the carryover thing from the old Mustang, it's more convincingly done. You have, bigger screens, you have, a whole new center console, new HVAC controls, those types of things, or the lack of HVAC controls, I guess I should say, versus Nissan just throwing in, 15-year-old Z switchgear and stuff, So, I mean, and also, in my opinion, the Mustang switchgear that they started with from S550 in 2015 was also nicer to begin with than a Z already. So you're already starting from a higher level. So anyway, don't want to go too long on a rant here, but I would say you got to go after Mustang and match it on pricing. And the second that it gets more expensive than Mustang GT, then you've lost your audience. So I think that's really what they have to undercut. And they're not. And so that's why you're seeing the market fix that for them. Since they didn't price it well, you see that whole deal of dealers finally softening up on them and, them just collecting dust, sadly. This is why none of us really sees these anywhere. And it's for good reason. I think they did it themselves. I think, in the first year, it could have been smart to price gouge people because you have the people that are excited about Z coming back with open wallets and blank checks. Sure, squeeze, those diehards for every penny they're worth if you need to. But then second model year, it should have been like, all right, here's the LSD pack for the base car. And now we have a 42.5, kind of car that's actually compelling. But they just, dropped the ball on that, in my opinion. And I remember gasping whenever they told us the pricing in the Nissan presentation. I had to hold myself back, but I believe my jaw literally actually dropped. I tried to minimize it, but I was like, what? Are you kidding me? It was funny, but there's great people working at Nissan. They're, very nice company to work with, but yeah, it's just a shame the way that whole thing played out. Anyway, moving back to the other member questions, but thank you so much again for the super chat. So Vishal says, I hit 1,000 miles on my 24 Jetta this weekend. Very exciting to put the first 1,000 miles on a new car. Absolutely. It's so fun racking up those first few miles and getting to learn the car and just enjoying, the new car smell and just the new car feel. It's great. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Vishal. And let me see. Yeah, Good Sticks asking also about the Elon event. And let me see. Luke says, I just ordered a 25 Maverick hybrid all-wheel drive Lariat trim in Eruption Green. Great choice. I hope production times are better than a couple of years ago. It seems like they are. I mean, it's Ford. I think they are still a little backed up, but hopefully it won't be wildly longer than, a regular order. But congrats on that. That's awesome. And I hope it comes in quickly. Hope you enjoy it. And I am hoping to get into Mavericks. I don't know. I mean, Ford's so slow with sending me press cars, but I'm hoping to test it at some point next year and seeing, what it's like. But let me see. Cam says, Matt, have you listened to the new KSI song? I don't know who KSI is. Sorry. Maybe that's short for something that I'm ignorant to. I'm not sure, but I'll have to look that up later if I can remember those letters. But anyone else that wants to fill me in, feel free. I apologize. I don't know. And thanks for stopping by, Jewel and Ruffy. And he says, happy car wash Sunday, although it's been cooling down. Yeah, hopefully you're not freezing too much. It was actually pretty warm today, though, here. It was surprising. that it was actually almost like a day you didn't need a jacket. And T-Track, thanks for stopping by as well. And Dylan says, do you think Honda will actually release that wide body Accord? I'd like to think they would. I don't think so. I mean, that's definitely, I mean, it is strange that it is so polished. But I, sadly, Honda likes wasting a lot of time on things that they shouldn't be wasting time on, honestly. Like a mule that's just some rough prototype, it should not look that pretty. In the same way, like they're wasting time on the hydrogen fuel cell CRV, in my opinion, at least. Like there's lots of things. So in that context of Honda making strange decisions frequently, unfortunately, these days, I think that's just something. Yeah, it was just for that media event. They made it look a little prettier, I guess, and tossed the body kit on it or whatever. And yeah, but I don't think they're going to make that wide body Accord. I'd love to see it, absolutely, but unfortunately, the realist in me says there's probably a very slim chance of that actually happening. And Jordan, thank you so much for being a member for 12 months now, a whole year. I really appreciate that. He says, EVs, hybrids, what happens to current blue-collar petrol factory workers? Cooperate or government transition training, quick stop oil change facilities? So as far as, this is actually something that Toyota's been talking about recently, because they, I think it was actually Akio Toyota who just recently, it might have been in this past week, said like, there will be like a lot of job losses, especially in Japan. If we do this kind of a transition, even just, as far as like production line workers, especially because, with their new gigacasting that Toyota is trying to, incorporate as well, there's going to be less pieces, less parts suppliers. It's all more efficient, but efficiency means you're cutting out parts and people. And, that is, going to be just one of those things that I don't think they have a choice. Like, obviously you don't ever want anyone to lose their job, and, the more jobs, the better. But I think, again, because of the insane competition coming from China, again, we'll see how each country plays, whether or not they let the Chinese cars in and all that. But, I mean, it's one of those things where like, you don't have the luxury of having bloated cars with bloated margins and having unnecessary parts and, keeping people on to be nice. It's really getting cutthroat out there, and then as far as, beyond factory workers, I mean, even like service workers, at regular dealerships, they're also, with hybrids, there's no issues because hybrids still have the gas engines, plug-in hybrids, anything that still has gas engines, you're still doing oil changes on, you're still doing belts, you're still doing, all the usual stuff. So anything with an engine is still fine. So I think that's partially why Toyota is still really pushing hybrids really strong, because it does actually meaningfully, contribute to dropping the emissions and stuff, but, while still giving you the best of both worlds in a way for everyone, whether it's just no range anxiety or it's, keeping all the workers there, online. But, as we go to the EVs, that's just going to be, one of the casualties of progress in that way. It's just going to be the unfortunate reality, because if Japan doesn't do it, China will do it for them, and then those people will be out of jobs anyways because those companies will go under. So it's just one of those like, uncomfortable things that has to happen, and so I think as far as, obviously there's a bunch of new things, all the different energy, production facilities, things like that, could always be, places to go to. I mean, there's obviously lots of new industries popping up, new things, where people can work and retrain themselves or whatever the case might be. And I think for a lot of them, there's still going to be, cottage industries, the companies like Singer and all those, obviously very few jobs at those places, but, the top, craftsmen for GR, for example, that are hand building GR Corollas right now. If we're in an EV world and they don't have to build engines anymore, those highly trained craftsmen can probably go work at a Singer or something like that. So the highly skilled labor, I think, will be okay. But as far as the regular workers, it's just going to be the other industries they'll have to go into or something like that. But yeah, it's just a changing world, and there's lots of lots of different industries where that's happening, where people are, having their whether it's like, coal slowly dying away and those people having to go and find something new to do or whatever. There's always transition things that, some people have to do. I mean, even myself, YouTube probably won't be here forever. I'm going to have to do the same thing someday and figure out, well, I can't review cars on YouTube anymore. What am I going to do? And, trying to find something as well. So it's just, that's part of life for a lot of people, unfortunately. But another very good, deep question there, Jordan. Thanks for asking. And other member questions here. So let me see. Grant says, my parents didn't really listen to music on the radio. The first I can really remember is Danger Zone. Nice. That's a pretty epic first song to hear for sure. Trucking Car Guy says, my mom always listening to Reba McEntire and Jody Messina. Nice. Yeah, so we're all showing our age in various ways, I think, with the names we're listing here. Luke said, one of my first car radio songs I remember is I'm the Only One, Melissa Etheridge. Nice. That is, you're kind of around the same time period as me then, I think there, Luke. One Rare Breed says, hey, Matt, hope all has been well. Longtime lurker that was gifted a membership. Besides a Mazda Miata, is there a manual convertible for under 40 new? I'm not sure what a base bare bones Mustang GT convertible goes for these days, but it's probably over 40. And I guess there's no more manual Mini convertible, so it might actually just be Miata. I think you might be right as far as new goes. Yeah, I feel like there's got to be like one other one that I'm forgetting, but I can't think of it. But I mean, especially as far as manual, I think that's probably the last one. Mazda should really take that and run with it, and like, hey, we're the last ones. Get them all you can. Yeah, but great question, and happy to see you were gifted a membership there. Looking forward to answering any other questions you have as well here when we're read. And Trent Carger says, my dad always listens to classic rock and hair thrash metal. Nice. That's that's a fun way to grow up as well, I'm sure. Danny says the driving school car was a 2019 Ford Fusion SE with the 1.5 engine, so not the EcoBoost. So just well, I think all the turbo motors, I think Ford called EcoBoost, right? So the 1.5 is a 3-cylinder, right? If I remember correctly, maybe that's the 4 still, but I think they all have like the EcoBoost kind of branding, even though it's not quite as boosty as other EcoBoosts, but not a bad car to learn on. Fusions are great. Cam says, the friend I went to Avril Lavigne with is at a Justin Timberlake concert right now. Would have gone, but life has been a little crazy right now, and I had to slow it down. Well, I can certainly understand that. And I mean, that sounds like it'd be a fun concert. We actually saw Justin Timberlake. This was like maybe 2018, I think. I think probably around 2018. Saw him when he came to Pittsburgh here. It was a good show. And so sorry you missed that one, but yeah, I totally get it. Jack says, oldies song, Lightning Strike in my dad's truck. Nice. Lightning Striking. I don't even know if I know that one. I know a decent amount of oldies because that is another thing. Yeah, my dad listened to a lot of oldies for sure whenever I was a kid. So there's some of that, but again, I'm not sure if I can remember earliest stuff in the car. Maybe it was the Beach Boys or something like that. I don't know. And Danny says, saw a cool car last Friday. It was a 2007 Subaru Forester Sports. The sports package is rare on the Forester. Love to see one up here in the north not rotting out. It's pretty cool. The funny spot that I saw this past week was I saw a super clean Eagle Talon. It wasn't like the turbo or any of the fancy impressive ones, just like a regular Talon in white, but like it was pristine. Like the wheels were pristine. There was no rust. It was clean paint. I posted in the Discord for anyone that's in there. But it was like phenomenal quality. And like the guy driving it was definitely an older gentleman who must have just bought it, 35 years ago or whatever, and just held on to it. It was the second gen of them when they had the, like, I don't know what you even want to call it, that like disc shaped wing on the back. And I was like, man, that is the cleanest Talon I've seen probably since in 30 years or something. It was impressive. So that was fun to see. And it's so funny how like stuff like that gets me excited. I saw an Audi R8 yesterday. It's like, oh, it's whatever. But an Eagle Talon, like so cool. So yeah, but let me know if you guys saw any fun stuff this week as well. And let me see. Jay, thank you so much for being a member for 16 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, currently in the process of putting my Type R in stock. Still very lost in thought. I'll never figure out how you managed to let go of the Bullet. Oh, so are you putting it back to stock to sell, I guess? Yeah, Bullets, it was tough. I was actually just thinking about it again today. It's still tough. I'm kind of starting to think about like my end of the year wrap up thoughts and all that. And it's like, yeah, like this is the year that I had to give up the Bullet. It's not fun, but again, that's life. Sometimes things aren't fun and it is what it is. But yeah, best of luck parting with the Type R there, and on to better things, hopefully. And let me see here. So Good Stick says, I've been seeing a lot of e-bikes like Lime bikes around my area. Some of them are utterly irresponsible and legislation should be present. Yeah, it seems like the all the like the Lime, like the scooters and all those things, like there's so many of those things where it's like just like anything goes with that stuff, and they're littered everywhere, and it's yeah, not a great look. And yeah, I agree. There should be some type of guardrails around that kind of stuff. Especially like I'm also worried about like some of these e-bikes that aren't particularly quick, and some people are actually like there's like these new like e-bikes that are like little mini motorcycles, but they can only do like 50 miles an hour or something, and it's like is that a great idea to like have on roads unrestricted? I feel like I mean, I guess there's maybe slower cars that struggle to do 50, but it just seems like it would not be a great idea for traffic flow. And anyway, Cam says, also, Matt, did you see Doug's video about his favorite reviewers? I'm sure you have enough free time to watch it, right? Yep, definitely. Didn't even know that existed. I'm sure I didn't make the list, but that's funny. I'm sure there's some interesting comments in that video, but maybe I will skim through it just because I'm a glutton for punishment sometimes. But anyway, thanks for actually putting that on my radar, because I will be with some other fellow reviewers this week, and sometimes Doug comes up in conversations. So I'll have to see what's up with that. Literally that made my eye twitch thinking about that. Anyway, Jordan says, okay, the same question as the other one you asked. And Joel says, hey Matt, I saw a gray Alfa Romeo 4C a couple of days ago. Looked amazing. Nice. That's a cool spot. It's been a while since I've seen a 4C. It's cool you got to see one. Kudos to people that bought those and drive them and enjoy them. Those are cool little cars. Luke says, what car brands in your experience? Sorry, I missed. Hold on, there's another super chat that came in. So thank you so much, Charlottetown Spud, for your super chat. They said, I'm 47 years old and was part of the 90s, 2000s tuner craze. That is awesome. I'm kind of jealous that I wasn't older to like appreciate that more. But he says, can you recommend a dedicated sports car that doesn't scream midlife crisis guy? I'm up for the challenge. Let me think. And great context there with, you like the tuner stuff. I guess it comes down to, obviously I need more context to give you great recommendations. I mean, I'm not sure what your car history has been or, what your preferences are, but to me, like the first thing that pops into my head is like, just go get a really clean S2000 if you have the money. Something like that is still just pure driving bliss. Lotus Elise, even like a used version, one of those. You got a nice Toyota high revving engine, but a really fun dynamic little car and something like that. Again, it comes down to, I guess, how limber you are at 47. If an Elise sounds like a horrible time, then definitely skip. But I'm trying to think. So if we're talking just new stuff, I'm just going to assume, just so we're not like trying to sift through the thousands of options on the used market. If we're talking new stuff, I don't know. I mean, to me, GRD6 and BRZ don't scream midlife crisis, really. I mean, I do see a fair amount of older people driving them, but I also see a lot of young people driving them too. And to me, it doesn't strike me as a midlife crisis thing. I do feel like Z kind of strikes me as that, especially since they're kind of going back to, some of the more retro styling that kind of to me makes it feel more like a midlife crisis kind of deal. I mean, it's still a fantastic car, and again, I'm always happy to drive them and stuff. But I feel like, yeah, a GR86 BRZ, something like that would be great. Again, comes down to how much money you have to play with as well. But I think like a BMW M2 is a great, option. That's another one where, it's, I don't think, if anyone who's going through a midlife crisis would maybe have like a Z4 or something a little bit, more extreme than an M2, which is kind of just like a nice daily that's also really fun. Has the wide body thing, so it's a little more, flamboyant, but it's not, in your face really. So I think like M2 is a nice happy medium. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other like tuner kind of stuff from like Japanese brands, but really I think GR86 BRZ are great. I mean, RCF's not a bad choice if that's something that you're open to. If you like tuner brands, RCF is so obscure. I feel like hardly anyone really drives them, and again, that's could be mistaken by non-enthusiasts as just like a regular, like they just have a nice coupe, like nothing that screams like I'm in a Corvette and I'm losing grip of my youth, like there's none of that. So I feel like RCF could be a good choice. Again, it really comes down to your budget. But those are my my best guesses there. But feel free if you want to send me any messages on whatever social media you prefer. I'm more than happy to kind of drill down with more context exactly what it is you're looking for, what you would like, what you need, and we can maybe have a better recommendation for you there. But hopefully gives you some food for thought with a few of those there to start. But thanks so much again for the super chat. And Brian, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, you haven't scrolled down yet, but if you stop doing car reviews, would you still be interested in YouTube, like food reviews? Yeah, I mean, there'd be an option. So there's a few other like creative ideas that I've had in the past that aren't car based that I could kind of pivot into if I still wanted to be, an online persona. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's a very good question. I think that no matter what, even if I stop doing everything on this channel, I think I would still probably pop in and do a live every once in a while. Just because, again, I really feel like we've built a community, and even if I had nothing new to offer because I wasn't driving new cars anymore or whatever, just like talking about whatever our observations are, from the past couple of months or something like that. I don't think I would ever completely go away from YouTube. And even just like for the simple fact, like YouTube actually demonetizes you if you don't post at least one video every 6 months. So I would still probably do life updates once every 6 months, just as a video too, and just be like, here's what's going on with me, for anyone who still cares out there, 5 years after I've quit or whatever the case is, I would still, be doing something just because, again, I don't want Google to get all the ad revenue for all the hard work I've put in for the past, 12 years of reviews. And that is the condition, is you got to be posting every 6 months to stay monetized. So I will never truly go away 100% unless I drop dead. But other than that, I'm going to, and even then I've told Beth, like, make sure you post something once every 6 months to keep the residuals coming in there, but not to be morbid. But so I will never, I don't think, fully go away on this channel. But I have some other ideas in the past that I've, thought about, commenting on. Or even just, doing gaming, streams and stuff, just being like, hey, I'm just digging out my old PlayStation 1 and playing, Need for Speed or something, and just having fun, doing that. There's all kinds of things I could do. So that's why, and this is also kind of why, I mean, obviously I still want to keep doing car reviews, but this is why, like, it's one of those things where I'm, every day I'm like, what is the backup plan? What is the plan B? Because this is something a lot of other YouTubers, I'm actually just listening to the Smoking Tire podcast from a couple of weeks ago when he had on the Everyday Driver guys. Really, really great. long conversation. They were like, it's almost a 2.5 hour podcast. I just listened to it while I was driving. And that was, it was really insightful because it's like, Matt Farah's got his, collector car garage, like, his exit strategy for YouTube eventually, or at least like a lifeboat, for whenever YouTube inevitably, screws us one way or the other someday, I mean, they have that. And now Everyday Driver, those guys have like a track day company that, does driving events and track days and stuff like that. And so it's like all of us car YouTubers, and I think honestly anyone who's on YouTube should have a solid backup plan of like, what are you going to do? And that's something I've been wrestling with. Do I go work for an OEM? Because I feel like that could be fun to, work for a car company, and kind of try and influence stuff from the inside. There's also, again, like I said, other ideas I've had as far as other YouTube things or other, social media things, other business ideas, whatever. I have a bunch of stuff that I have no time to execute on, but I think as far as what pivot I would go in, the direction I would come down to, do people still actually like hearing me talk and and watching me on video? I think I would be discouraged from doing more YouTube if the channel ends because of view counts dropping off. Then it's like, okay, well, people have just lost interest in me. I'm an old personality on here. I have been for a while. And so if it just gets that kind of a point, then I'm like, well, maybe I don't need to be online anymore, and I can do other things. So we'll see. Again, thankfully, this year, especially this fall, has been a little bit better. The views have been a little bit better. The ad rates have been better thanks to the election year. The insane amounts of ad spend that's going in is always nice. Election years are always nice here in the fall from an earnings standpoint. So there's that. That's definitely making the end of this year more than okay, I guess. But we will see again what next year brings. And every year I say this could be the last year that I do car reviews, and that's still on the table, and we will see what happens. But thank you so much for the super chat, Brian. I really appreciate it, and great question again. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says, car windows for humans that require eyewear. I'm trying to wrap my head around this question. Car windows for humans that require eyewear. So like, you mean like windshields that are prescription? Is that kind of what you're getting at? I'm assuming. That's kind of tricky. That would, I think, just be hard to execute, because what if the mechanic gets in your vehicle or someone else has to drive your car, or you want to sell your car or trade it in? I'm sure someone's probably noodled with that idea as well. And just, I feel like that would be not practical. Maybe if there's a day where, we have augmented reality wind screens and you can just, swap stuff like that, maybe on the fly, then that could be kind of a nice touch. But I feel like you'd have to do it on all the windows, because then you look to the side, you need to be able to see. But then even when you're looking in the cabin, you need to be able to see. So I feel like sticking with the glasses on your head is probably the best solution there. But thank you again, Jordan, for another super chat. Brian, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that. Happy to see some familiar faces there, able to grab some of those. And thank you so much for your generosity. I'm sure they all appreciate it as well. And Jordan says, CBS News, consumers want physical buttons. Interesting. I hadn't heard that they had a report about that, but that's great. I think this is, a growing kind of pushback against all the screens. I think a lot of people are burned out on them. It's overloaded already, and we're going more and more into screens. And I feel like it's like, we're getting like to a point where it's like, can you do more screens? Can you make them bigger? I mean, Cadillac is trying here with a new Escalade, having this pillar to pillar thing. Lincoln having the pillar to pillar almost thing. There's a lot of that out there, and we will see. Consumers vote with their wallets, and if they keep buying the stuff with all the screens, then, obviously in a lot of cases there's no choice. But, if people, in the market say, okay, I have an Escalade with a pillar to pillar screen, I have a Lincoln with almost pillar to pillar, and then we have like Infiniti QX80, which has more traditional double screens, big, but not quite taking over the entire front. If like Infiniti does really well with those and everyone's like, it's because it's got smaller screens, then maybe that would, cause other companies to follow. It's just, they're all following trends. And right now, and I think companies kind of follow trends to a fault. I think Piano Black is another case of this, where it's just like, oh yeah, this is a cheap material that we can make an interior look way classier. And, everyone else is doing it, so let's all pile in on it. And they all did. And they're like, okay, maybe this is a bad idea to do it, and especially do it in excess, like some companies did. Kia figured this out with the Carnival, having giant slabs of painted black on a minivan, baby hauler kind of thing, where that's going to get super gross. And they switched that here with the refresh, and I commented on that in my review a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, yeah, they got rid of all the painted black pretty much, and they figure that out. And so I think other companies will do the same with screens if people push back enough, and the used market really stays strong. And people seem to prefer that stuff more than you will see car companies adapt, I'm sure. And MD Can, thank you so much for being a member for 30 months now. I really appreciate it. He says 30 months of supporting one of the best smaller size car reviewers, if not the best. I really appreciate that. And yeah, thanks so much for the support. It means a lot. And it all comes down to you guys at the end of the day. Is obviously, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, because everyone who's bothered to hang out with me on a Sunday night, you guys, I know, always support the channel, but it really comes down to just that mass appeal, and just everyone else watching the videos and liking and sharing to keep this going, because it really is, it's all about you guys at the end of the day. You vote with your views as far as who stays and who goes off the island of car reviewers. And so I appreciate every view and every bit of support that you guys are up for. So thank you so much for that. And let me see, getting back to the other member questions here. I promise I will get caught up on all of them here. I know we have had a lot of super chats there, which is great. I really appreciate that. But I also don't want anyone who doesn't do super chats to worry. I will definitely answer your questions as well here. So let me see. Luke was asking, what car brands in your experience do decent wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, meaning they don't disconnect every bump you hit on the road? I've never had wireless Android Auto. My Maverick will have it. Most companies these days do a pretty good job. Some of them occasionally will freeze up a little bit. It's been very rare. There have been a couple of instances where they'll just like completely disconnect on me, but typically it's just like it gets laggy, it gets slow. It's honestly, I don't even know if it's brand versus brand. Like sometimes it's just model versus model. Some models do it better than others, even within a brand. But if I had to narrow it down based on brands, I'm trying to think. It'd be easier for me to think about the ones that do it badly. And I mean, I think Stellantis, there's been some times where it's been a little glitchy. And some of the GM stuff is a little glitchy at times. It seems like they didn't put enough processor power behind a lot of the GM. Like the Colorado had some glitches. I actually have a Buick Enclave right now. There was one time where it kind of got a little glitchy in that. And there's a couple of others from GM I remember. I think Trax occasionally was a little bit, not perfect in my brief little drive in that. I mean, so I feel like it's just that new gen GM system. I think GM is also kind of half-hearted with their integrations these days, because again, in the EVs, they don't even offer the option. So for the gas stuff, they're like, kind of stubbornly like, okay, well, begrudgingly, I guess is the word, being like, fine, we'll give you the integration, but it's just not great. Like even this Enclave, you have this like big 30-inch curved display that has like an angle. Sorry, angle on this corner, and like there's like a lot of it is still rectangular, and the CarPlay spot, the whole like integration for that, it like stops way before even the end of the rectangle bit. Doesn't even bother even trying to fill in the corner part. But even without that expectation, just like it doesn't even go to the edge before it starts tapering down. It's just like a smaller display. It's a little fuzzy, and it seems like GM just does some of the worst CarPlay integrations currently. It's even like the Hummer, it was a smaller little display, and I know GM again wants to get rid of that, so I'm not going to what's the word? I don't want to turn down the gift of CarPlay, which is unfortunately the situation we're in with GM right now, but it's just not a good integration. So I'd say GM is probably the worst in my experience from a brand standpoint as far as that wireless integration goes. Ford is okay. The Mach-E occasionally gets a little weird with it, but it's largely okay. And I don't recall any issues with the other Fords that I've had with CarPlay. I think it's been okay. I think actually Mustang might have disconnected once. I can't remember for certain though. I think 4 is mostly okay. I don't think I would rank 4 as the top for that either, but it should be mostly okay. You might have a minor annoyance on rare occasions, but it should be okay. And the nice thing is with all these new cars, you can have over the air updates. They're going to update the software and improve that stuff. So hopefully that will get better with time as well if you do find it to be unsatisfactory originally. And Austin says, Rady's Rise reviewed an EcoBoost Mustang. MSRP was 43 grand. I find that insane. Absolutely. No, I mean, I think the EcoBoost Mustang that I reviewed earlier this summer, I think that was more. I think that one, because it had the performance pack, it had like the Recaros and a bunch of other crap that it didn't need to have. And that thing was, I thought it was close to 50. It was high and, it made 0 sense. Yeah, they don't have any competition anymore. So when you don't have any competition and you have the inflation, thing, which is again, still just messing with all of our heads as far as what was, from a pricing standpoint, it's just, a little bit, I keep telling everyone 30 is the new 20 as far as pricing. And that's, I think the easiest way to just be like, okay, let's just like move the goalpost down 10 grand and, just try to, use that to wrap our heads around a little bit easier. But it is wild for sure. And it's a shame they've gotten so expensive. Pete says he still hasn't seen a Z on the road. I've heard that from more than a few people. It is crazy. Cam says, how's Beth doing? Haven't seen her in a while. She's doing well. Yeah, she's we're again having a busy time here with all the fall stuff. And but she's doing well. And we'll have her on live here again soon. And Cara says, I really enjoyed your news and opinions on the Acura RSX. Do you have any more thoughts or predictions regarding the RSX? What kind of response did you get regarding your hunch about it? I'm glad you enjoyed it. It seems like most people didn't have too much of an issue with that prediction. Some people took issue to some of the other things I said in the weekly update, which is kind of usual these days. But as far as the RSX part, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people, see that making sense. Obviously, there's a lot of people that just don't want to see that. They want to, see it be an Integra coupe or whatever. But I don't really have much more thoughts, I'd say, beyond what I said in the weekly update this week. It just to me makes sense that's how they'll play it. Is RSX will be the Acura version of the Prelude, and yeah, I mean. The only thing that is giving me pause, and I didn't include this in the weekly update, the only little thing I will add is that I believe at some point fairly recently, Acura did say they're going back to regular names for new models and that they were maybe going to be going away from all these, letters and numbers and, stuff. So I just don't know if that's truly the case or from misremembering and thinking of another brand, but I thought that was something that they were doing. And this is why we saw Integra. And that was the start of, I think I heard Legend could potentially return and those types of things. So, that would be obviously RSX is again, more of those letters. So that would be the only thing giving me pause about that is if they truly do want to stick with, Integra and, all the other names that they have, and then that, might be the way they play it. And they're just keeping RSX around again, just to preserve the trademark. But I'd be willing to bet a small amount of money that it will be RSX for the Acura Prelude. We'll see. And Charlottetown says, thanks for such a great answer. I'm glad that was a good answer for you. And again, feel free to message if you want to have any other context to provide, and I'm more than happy to drill down with you there. And that is also, speaking of the prior question about what I would do if I wasn't doing YouTube, that has been another thing to consider is doing, kind of car consulting in one way or another, because that's what I really love doing is helping people find a car they love. So even if I can't do, entertaining enough videos to get people to watch anymore someday, if people still just knew that I knew what I was talking about, hopefully, and valued, my insight just based on what I have driven, even if I wasn't in all the new stuff recently, even if I just knew, okay, well, this has this and this doesn't have this or whatever, that could be a potential thing of just, doing some of advising, and trying to, build up a little bit of a business around that potentially. But anyway, let me see. Vishal says Honda needs to come up with a hybrid powertrain for the bigger cars like the Pilot, Odyssey, and why is there no HRV hybrid? They even brought back the Civic hybrid. To me, I think, I mean, again, Honda is one of those companies where I've kind of had to abandon rational, critical thinking about some of this stuff because they have a lot of these oversights that make no sense to me. But if I were using rational thought here, I'd say absolutely Civic hybrid came first. We will see HRV hybrid next, is my guess. That should be the way it works. Whether it actually goes that way or not, flip a coin. But yeah, absolutely. And as far as a hybrid for the bigger stuff, I agree with you. I don't know why they haven't jumped on that, especially because Sienna sells so well. You would think they'd want to compete for next gen Odyssey, and maybe they will. Pilot, that buyer doesn't really care as much about hybrid. Look at the best sellers in the segment. None of them are hybrid, really. No one really cares outside of Highlander. But they still sell tons of everything else that's non-hybrid. No problem. And I don't even think Kia and Hyundai are doing hybrid for the next gen Telluride and Palisade. I think they're dropping the V6, but I don't think they are, getting rid of or adding a hybrid system in. So yeah, I think for stuff like Pilot, Passport, there's probably not a whole lot of demand there for that. Even with these days of everyone, wanting hybrids. So I think, it's one of those things. Sometimes they do have to follow the market, but for stuff like HRV, I think it's a no-brainer still, especially since all the pieces are there. And it's literally a copy and paste kind of thing. And Austin says, hey, Matt, you missed my earlier question. I apologize. He says, Honda confirmed no manual transmission on the Prelude. What are your thoughts? Interesting. I hadn't heard that, but that's good that they're being open about that so they don't get people's hopes up. I think Honda maybe figured out with Integra that they maybe did get people's hopes up in the past as far as the styling or the body style or whatever. And so I hadn't heard that. That's great. They're getting out in front of that and, putting that to rest so that, people don't get all upset whenever it does come or not come here. Well, we still don't even have confirmation of that, I don't think. But, it's no surprise. Like I said, I think we talked about this a week or two ago in the weekly update or in the live stream, and I mentioned this in the weekly update as well, where there's no way to do a manual with their hybrid system because the engine is just a generator for the battery. It's only connected to the wheels at like 50 miles per hour or higher on the highway. Otherwise, it's never even connected to the wheels at all. Like there's no physical connection. So you can't really do a manual with that. So again, I think some of the creative extrapolating before this was shot down was that, maybe there's a new hybrid system or maybe they've found a way to re-engineer it so that you can have a traditional transmission. But it sounds like, our pessimistic, safe bet for Prelude seems like it is coming true, at least as far as no manual, but it'll most likely just be, again, same old, take the top, hybrid powertrain from Accord. It's going to be tossed in a Prelude, and it'll be a cool two-door. I'm never going to complain about a two-door coming to market because that's a very hard business case. I'm amazed they've even gotten this far with it. But it's just, they're gonna be like, oh, no one wants a coupe, no one wants a Prelude. It's like, well, they probably just didn't want it the way you did it. I'm excited for it regardless, and I think the hybrid Civics are great. It's a lot of punch. It's a great alternative to people who want a Civic Si with way better fuel economy and an automatic. But I hope that they just, I don't know, maybe pivot and do a Prelude Si and just copy and paste the Si powertrain, do a Prelude Type R. Those are the things people want. Those are the things people would pay money for and would, boost the take rate for Prelude versus marketing it as some type of two-door Prius or something. I don't know. I don't see that doing well for them, but, we will see. You'd think, all the hard ways they have to like try and justify this business case to corporate. And then the one that got the green light was, let's just like copy and paste our hybrid powertrain in a vehicle that no one really buys anymore with a two-door. Like, how did that be like, oh, okay, well, you convinced us. All right, now we'll build it. And not whenever they wanted to do it with all the other cool powertrains they've had over the past, 10 years or whatever. So I don't know. We'll see. But that's a shame. And thanks again, Austin, for highlighting your question again. Sorry I missed it the first time. But let me see. Too, thank you so much for stopping by, too. And I see also there's some other super chats here, so I want to answer them in order. So, Jordan, I see you had one, but then you retracted it. So Apologies for that, but I see you have another one here. He says GM or Ford with the best EV, Focus EV. It comes out of the segment, obviously. I think that the Lightning is a better, more practical normal truck for people who want an electric truck. I think that GM obviously does the more affordable EVs better with our the Blazer EV is a little pricey, but with Equinox EV. I think that's a really good value and undercuts the Mach-E and all that stuff. And I think honestly, even Blazer EV, if it's close enough in pricing and you stick away from some of the expensive options on Blazer EV, I think it's a better Mach-E in a lot of ways. It has a lot of the things the Mach-E didn't have, like the sliding sunshade with cooled seats, some of these other things. I think Blazer's, better in a lot of ways, better handling. So it comes down to which segment in particular you're talking about, but hopefully that's a good answer. Focus EV is one of the OGs there, and cool of them to try that. I'd love to see Ford do another Focus EV someday. Brian, thanks so much for being a member for a month. He says, okay, Matt, gotta go. Have a good night chat. Thanks so much for stopping by, Brian. I really appreciate, again, the gifting, and thanks for stopping by for a little bit here. We will go for another hour or so here for the rest of us, but have a great week, Brian, and thanks for stopping by again. But thank you so much for Super Chat as well. He says, I'm late. Are we getting Matt tonight or SWF? Some say, wait, Peter, doesn't do the Stig ripoff joke. The other guy lost his van card. Yeah, it is the good old Matt tonight. SuperX fan is only a thing of the past these days, sadly. Although in 2's basement lore, I think SuperX fan is stuck in the basement or something, and I have replaced him or whatever. But I see MBKN surprised that 2 got out of the basement. And TFI thinks he's on parole. Thanks for stopping by, 2, and hope you're doing well. Let me see. I remember questions here. So, where was I? Grant says, to show my age, the first movie I saw in the theater was Xanadu. I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry. Yep, my joints crack every time I move. Well, I am starting to get there too. It's more aches and pains, and just being like waking up being like, why does my arm hurt? Why does my leg hurt? Why does my knee hurt? It's just like that kind of stuff already setting in for me, so I can relate to that component at least a little bit. But Austin says he saw the manual thing there on Reddit. Interesting. Raphael says, I remember listening to the group Boston. Their first album had just come out. Nice. That's cool. Yeah, Boston's a great band. Brian says, hey, Matt, if you stop doing car reviews... Okay, yeah, we answered that earlier. And I know he's already probably signed off here. Luke says, Fusion was still 4-cylinder with the 1.5. Fun fact, it started out as a 1.6 turbo, but in 2015, they lowered it to 1.5 due to other markets taxing motors larger than 1.5. Interesting. Okay, I guess I must have missed that, because wasn't Fiesta still 1.6 even beyond 2015, if I remember correctly? For Fiesta ST, I could be wrong, but I somehow missed that switch. I know they had the 1.5 3-cylinder EcoBoost. I tested that in the Focus, and that was cool. But that was actually very slow, though. That was one of the slowest cars I've ever reviewed. But it was really a marvel of an engine at that time, and but thanks for the little factoid on that. And Dave says he remembers Jim Croce in his Ford LTD. I actually saw an LTD today that was also very clean and very brown. It was fun that someone had restored it. It was a 4-door too, which, but it was like, man, I haven't seen one of those in a long time too. That takes me back to my childhood of like seeing beater rough versions of those, in the early 90s out on the road still. And Jordan says, Chad's mom, my mother-in-law, ordered a 2025 Maverick. So happy for her. That's awesome. Yeah, Mavericks seem to be really resonating with people, and for good reason. It's a really well-done little vehicle. So yeah, congrats to her. And let me see. So Sean, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, with hybrids getting more powerful, I would love to see more sports cars adopting the system. No need to turbo when you can attach an electric motor. I agree. It does, and it gives you quicker response, better efficiency. It's kind of that best of both worlds kind of thing, like, Civic Si versus Civic Hybrid. So yeah, I mean, I think my problem with the Honda hybrid system in the Prelude in particular, it's a very good powertrain in everything that it's in currently, but for Prelude, because there's less of a direct connection, and again, the engine's just it's revving, kind of in relation to your throttle inputs, but it just doesn't feel like a direct connection because it's not, but like it's again, maybe they can do some software tweaking to make it feel more visceral, but when you accelerate in the Honda hybrid powertrain, to me, it's like it's going quickly, you're getting the G forces, it's performing well objectively, but you're not necessarily experiencing the powertrain, if that makes any sense. I might be kind of completely losing everybody here, but it's just like, um, yeah, like you don't have the gratification of like actually revving through the power band, and getting those reference points directly. It's a little different. So I don't know. I mean, again, I always approach everything with an open mind from a car, standpoint. I'm excited to try it out if I get the chance, and maybe it can convince me. Again, I'll be excited just because it's a coupe, but I hope that it's more than just a comfy, very fuel efficient coupe with a good amount of power, but yeah, TFI says, yeah, that Civic Hybrid is a great example of this with the motor. And I think also from a reliability standpoint, it's fantastic too, because not having the turbo, not that turbo motors are always worse, but you reduce some of the complexity there and also some of the cost potentially. Obviously the electric stuff's not cheap too, but you have just a good old naturally aspirated engine. I think for a lot of people's comfort level, that is a little bit more of a safer bet. And so I think that going back to natural aspiration from everyone putting a turbo on everything, I think, we might see a resurgence of naturally aspirated vehicles. And again, like you said, dropping the turbo, but putting an electric motor in instead and having a great experience. I think, Camry's already doing this, and, and it's kind of doing, I mean, I guess Hyundai does both with a turbo and a hybrid system with their setup, but I think, that's why Camry, the powertrain on that feels way more direct and responsive than like the hybrid component in the Sonata and stuff. It's more dynamic in the Camry as a result of just good old naturally aspirated engine. And let me see other member questions here. So where was I? So Danny says the 1.5 was non-turbo actually in the Fusion, so it's a slow car to learn. Thank goodness. Well, that's good, man. So it's actually a non-turbo 1.5. Well, how much horsepower did that do? That's got to be insanely slow, especially in a Fusion. I didn't know they did that. That's a naturally aspirated 1.5. Wow. Learned something new. Thank you. Good Stick says, I went to a meet and saw a 1977 Mark I Golf. It's a resto mod as the original parts can't be found anymore. And the performance of the original Golf is not enough anymore in modern America and big SUVs. Yeah, well, I can certainly understand that. And that's cool, though. Great to see someone still driving one of those and keeping it on the road. Jay says, yeah, it's been very hard. Migraines and headaches, finding a replacement to try and fit the bill in my life. I'm sorry to hear that. That really sucks. But yeah, hopefully you can get something. There's lots of, comfy, more, things just that actually still are dynamic and fun without being as hardcore as the Type R. It's not for everyone, and I mean, I love Type R's myself, but, it wouldn't be my first pick for a daily either, just because I like my creature comforts and, having an easy seat to get in and out of and stuff. I actually just even had a Miata a couple of weeks ago for a week, and it's horrible to say, but even getting out of the Miata, I'm like, this is kind of low. Like I'm starting to feel like an old man. I'm like, I'm only in my mid-30s. This is not like the way it needs to be, but I think it's partially I'm just like slightly out of shape as well. But I mean, getting out of the Miata was a little more of a pain than it used to be for me, and I get it. It's not like it's some hardship or something, and especially for a car like that, especially if you're not daily driving and it's just a weekend car, totally fine to deal with. But I'm like starting to be like, do I love these super low cars I get in and out of? I can, kind of see the appeal a little bit. So I will take my cane and yeah, just take my Metamucil tonight and just consign myself to the old person life. But it's just kind of funny. I was like, why am I like not enjoying getting out of the Miata? I used to not even think about this, and now I'm like, I gotta like hoist myself out of a Miata. So I think I just need to get back into the gym or something as well. But anyway, sorry to hear though, Jay. That really sucks. Migraines and headaches are no joke. That's something that Beth has struggled with in the past. And it's not a fun thing to deal with. So I absolutely seriously can commiserate with you on the struggles of that. That's not fun, and hope it gets better soon. And Luke, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, my Maverick Hybrid will be my first hybrid vehicle. I've never driven a hybrid. Anything I should know? Is maintenance any difference? I'm trying to think like things for someone who's new to hybrids. I'm sure there's some great like tutorials out there for new hybrid drivers. But I mean, the only thing I will say is, it's probably going to be a little disorienting having the engine turn off, whenever you are letting off of the gas. And that's just going to be something you have to get used to. But, the car usually tells you it's always ready, so you never have to worry about it feeling like it's breaking down or anything, that's really, I think, honestly, the biggest adjustment is just having the engine not being on 24/7 when the vehicle is turned on. That's probably, the only real change, aside from the fact that you'll not be filling up as much and you'll be saving money on gas, which is the other great thing to get used to in a good way. But maintenance wise, I don't think there's any difference for maintenance. Battery, I think, usually is warranted to like 8 years, 100,000 miles, if I remember correctly, for the Fords. So you have a long time before you got to worry about that. Some of the stuff, like the older stuff, like the old Priuses and stuff, eventually, you need a hybrid battery. But that's a small battery. It's not, very expensive. It's not a big deal. You can actually, I think even there's a Chris Fix video on how to replace a Prius battery yourself. So it's not, a giant thing. And again, that's a long ways off. But that's really, I think, the only other thing, to worry about. Some hybrids have, ECVT. So if there's no actual transmission, then you don't have to worry about transmission flushing and fluid and stuff. The Ford one, I think, is actually one of those where I think it actually still uses a CVT. I don't remember exactly on the Maverick and how they're doing it with the all-wheel drive one in particular. But yeah, a lot of times, there's a lot less maintenance there as far as that goes. But I think that's about it. But yeah, congrats. It's welcome in advance to the hybrid life. I think hopefully you'll enjoy it, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts once you've had a little bit of time behind the wheel there. And thank you again, Luke, for the super chat. And John Evans Real Estate, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, hey Matt, Saturn Sky Redline Turbo 4 or Crossfire SRT6 Supercharged 6, which would be the funnest option? Both have similar weight. Thanks. That is tough. I haven't driven the SRT6 Crossfire. I would love to someday, but man, what a rare car. Probably I'd argue even rarer than the Sky Redline. I think it also comes down to, I'm assuming we're comparing automatic versus automatic, because otherwise, you couldn't get the manual in the Crossfire for the SRT6, I believe. You could get a manual with the Redline Sky. So if manual equals more fun to you, then I would say Sky Redline. If we're talking automatic versus automatic, I would assume, again, not having driven it, but I would assume that the whine of a supercharged V6 in the Crossfire would probably be more fun than the Turbo 4 in the Sky. It also comes down to your preference of sounds and stuff. If you're someone who grew up again in the tuner years and you love the sound of turbo whistle and all the accommodating power delivery and all that, then I think that could be more fun. But if you are more from the muscle world, or you just enjoy a supercharger whine for whatever reason, like I love supercharger whine, so to me I would lean towards SRT6. But again, it's hard to say without having driven it, because if they completely like neutered the transmission response and just made it kind of feel like a wet noodle with an awesome engine, then maybe the Sky Redline would be a better choice. But yeah, that's probably the best insight I'm able to give there without having driven that. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And two, thank you for another super chat as well. He says, let's take a poll chat. How soon before Tavares drops a video saying Milton ruined my P1? Too soon. Peter has no PC filter. I mean, that's the YouTuber car way for these vloggers and builders, right? Is find the most crazy abandoned supercar or whatever and fix it up and do that kind of a thing. So maybe they will be hunting for some of those. I did see I saw a few pictures of a few cool cars that unfortunately were flooded out and stuff due to Milton. So I'm sure there's some of that kind of stuff out there. We will see if that kind of stuff pops up. Wouldn't surprise me. But Jordan, thank you for super chat as well. He says, why no Toyota Ford collab with Alpha EV or EV and hybrid? I'm not sure, Ford doesn't really collaborate with anyone. Like Toyota and all these Japanese brands are, a little more open to collaboration. But, when is the last time Ford collaborated with another brand on something? I can't think of anything off the top of my head in a long time. Even GM, they collab, like everyone collabs really except Ford. I think there's some corporate culture stuff at Ford that probably prevents that. And I think, again, I'm no expert on Ford internal stuff, but I just feel like Ford might be a little bit harder to work with than some of the other companies. And again, Ford, because they have the title of, we have the best-selling vehicle in America with the F-150 and stuff. So I think they're very protective. They have the only muscle thing, and it sells really well with the Mustang. And, I think there's just some of that. I mean, I guess now thinking of it, there is a Ford-Volkswagen collab, where in Europe, they've collabed on the MEV platform. That's why we have the Ford Explorer EV in Europe, which is just the ID4 essentially underneath in a lot of ways. And they're collaborating on cargo vans, and then the Ford Capri they just debuted in Europe. That also is on the Volkswagen MEV platform. So I guess there is one, collaborator there like that, but that's really it. I see TFI says they collabed with Nissan for the Mercury Nissan minivan. You're right. That is, and Ranger with Mazda. Okay. Yeah. So there's some stuff there from the past. Thanks for bringing those up, everyone. Refreshing my memory. You're right. So they did work with a lot in the past. I mean, they bought a lot of brands in the past. They had the Aston Martins and the Land Rovers and all that. And then they, sold off a lot of that stuff and quit doing a lot of those collaborations there. So I guess it's really been a change in the past 15 to 20 years or so, interestingly enough. So yeah, but thanks for the help there on that one, guys. And great question there, Jordan. And let me see other member questions. So where was I here? So Cam says, which reviewers will you be seeing this week? I'm not sure. I don't always know everyone who's coming on things until I'm actually there. I'm like, oh, hey, you're on this wave too, because there's oftentimes other waves. So, I might miss people by a day, or they're arriving as I'm leaving, or things like that. So yeah, I don't know 100%. I believe maybe Sophian's going to be at the event that I'll be at this week here. And I think, because me and him kind of compare notes sometimes on what we're on, what press cars we're getting, since we get stuff from the same press fleet. So I think he's on it, but I know a few people who aren't going to be on it, unfortunately, because there is, I think, something else also going on this week that other people committed to before they knew about this other event. So yeah, there's some of that, but I don't know of the others, but I will try and see if we can get a little selfie or something of all of us this week whenever we're all together, whoever it ends up being. But Luke says the 2025 Nissan kicks the hornet's nest down the road in Kona, Hawaii. I'm not sure of the reference there, but Nissan Kicks is great. I love them. And I'm actually going to have one. I'm surprised they're sending me one here pretty quickly here as a week-long loan, which will be a great thing to follow up with from the regular Kicks review, because that review has done amazingly well. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can understand, it's affordable and there's some real demand out there for affordable stuff, but there's some hype behind the kicks, at least based on my view counts, because I mean that thing has outperformed a lot of the really exciting cars that I've posted in the past, few months. And so I'm excited to do a follow-up since there seems to be a lot of interest here on the channel for the kicks. So I'll be having a full week with one of those here fairly soon, and I'll be posting that here, in the next few months. But Dave, actually, I'm going to be posting at the end of this month because I'm going to sneak that one in because it's going to be a quick little my week with thing. But anyway, Dave says Eagle Talon was my first time driving manual. New at a dealer in '89. I was 17. That salesman was my hero. A few months later, I almost bought an 86, but I thought it was a regular Corolla. Wow, that's crazy. You could have had a real collector on your hands there with that. But I mean, even the Talon would have been a great buy. But man, that's an awesome salesman. I mean, that's the same as like my first fun. Well, maybe not my very first, but one of my first fun car experiences was thanks to a cool salesman. My little 11-year-old self walking into a Subaru dealership in 2001 when the first 2002 WRXs were starting to land, and being super excited as a Subaru WRX fan even back then. And I asked some of the salesmen, like, oh, like, could you, take me for a ride? My dad's here with me. Can we test drive one or something? I'm like, oh, yeah, right. Like, you can sit behind the wheel and we'll turn a fan on so you can feel the wind in your hair. Like, they were like laughing off this like 11-year-old kid. They were just like wanted to like check out the new WRX. But then one of the salesmen, I still remember his name. I am horrible with names. And to this day, what has it been now? 23 years later? Or yeah, something like that. Yeah, I still remember the salesman's name to this day. And then he's like, "I'll take you for a ride," and it was me and my dad. He took us both for a ride, and he did a clutch dump in a brand new WRX, which these days I would thoroughly look down on a salesman that did that, but for an 11-year-old, I mean, it blew my mind. And I mean, that is what made me a Subaru WRX fan. I mean, I already was excited about them. My dad was into Subarus, so I was already like kind of a Subaru fanboy, I guess, at that age. But like a clutch dump in a WRX to an 11-year-old sitting in the backseat hanging on for dear life, mind blown. And that moment is entirely what is to thank for the entire Subaru WRX fan stuff that happened for the decade or so after that, and it's those salesmen, if you are out there and you are a salesman or whatever, like those types of things really can imprint on people, especially younger people, for the rest of their lives in a very positive way. And I think that's one of the best ways to bring out some new enthusiasts is showing them the fun in a safe, responsible way. But I have that salesman to thank entirely for my love of WRXs all those years. And if he would have laughed me off as well, maybe I would have gone across the street to a Honda dealer and become a Civic Si fan or something. I don't, but it just like it really is so cool, and salesmen are awesome like that. So cool to share your story there, Dave. Thanks so much for that. And yeah, great to hear there's at least a few fun, awesome salesmen out there that we still remember to this day. Trent Cargay says, I almost forgot, a couple of weeks ago, Huracan showed up at my job and we aren't exactly in the most expensive part of town. Nice. That's pretty cool. It's always fun to see a Huracan. They sound great. And I appreciate, again, also all the hearts and everything, everyone, during the story time there. It's always fun to get that instant feedback. And Danny says, small correction on the Fusion. It was the 1.5 turbo, but I didn't see the EcoBoost badge on it. So I thought it was the non-turbo. The 1.5 was still a turbo, and 4 and turbo 3. Gotcha. Okay, so I'm not crazy because I was gonna say a 1.5 NA motor would be struggling. Dave says, embrace the midlife crisis. Corvette is a given, and Corvettes are very good. I still think a C7 especially is a really good buy. I haven't looked recently at pricing, but whenever they cratered, like right as soon as C8 came out, I mean, they were even at that point under 30, and I'm sure inflation has done its thing since then, and I don't know what C7s are going for these days, but C7 is a lot of car for, whatever they're charging for them, as long as it's not, more than 40 grand. I think C7 is a phenomenal buy. Fantastic car, super reliable, super practical with a huge hatch. You still have CarPlay, you still have, your touchscreen that does the basics. It still has, everything you need and everything you want. I think they still look fantastic. And I've actually seen less and less C7s these days. I don't know if everyone around here just upgraded to C8s or what, but I'm kind of sad because C7 is still fantastic. I don't have a ton of love for C6. C5 is kind of starting to get nostalgic to me, so I'm starting to look through the rose-colored glasses here for C5, but C7 is like where it's at. Like they are fantastic, and you can get them with a manual again, which you can't get anymore. A C7, I don't know if a lot of people really talk about C7s anymore, but like absolutely endorse a C7 purchase for anyone who wants a really good sports car with a V8 and a manual. For not much money, relatively speaking. C7s, I think, are slept on for sure right now. And Dating says the GSF is a good sports sedan. Yeah, GSFs are fantastic for sure. Nicholas says, I'd stop by the Maran lemonade stand all the time. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you stopping by, Nicholas, here. And I do have the merch store. If you do want to buy something from the Matt Moran store there, don't sell lemonade, but do sell lots of other fun merch, including beverage glasses. So you can check it out on mattmoranmotoring.com. I think there's also a merch shelf potentially here on this video. But that's the new merch store I talked about a few weeks ago. And Cara says, a cool car that I saw was apparently a 2008 Bentley Continental Flying Spur, and I was recently driving side by side with a Cybertruck on the freeway. Thankfully, the driver had good manners. Well, that's good to hear. Glad you made it out okay, Cars, with driving next to a Cybertruck. Sean says, my daughter and I got the one finger salute from a Cybertruck driver, giving him the L on the forehead sign. Nice. Oh, man. Yeah, Cybertruck drivers. I mean, they have to know it's coming for them. They're either delusional and think that everyone thinks they're cool or what, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe my read is wrong, but I feel like the majority of people don't think Cybertrucks are cool. I could be wrong and way off base here, but I don't know if drivers of them think everyone thinks they're cool or if they don't care and they just are drinking the Kool-Aid and it's whatever or what. But I don't know. I'd be very curious to hear if there's self-aware Cybertruck owners that know that people are actually laughing at them and not like impressed by their vehicle. I don't know. I mean, again, no hate to anyone who has a Cybertruck. It is what it is. It's not a vehicle that I would recommend personally. I've never driven it, but there's better electric trucks out there in my opinion. Anyway, let me see. I think that I didn't want to miss a couple other super chats that came in. So Jordan, thank you for another super chat. He says, why no 100% built in America vehicles as far as battery, I guess you mean electric vehicles, or maybe you just mean in general. I think, we are in a global economy and, people are selling products that need to turn a profit. And so if you had everything 100% built in America, there are certain things that one would just be impractical to do that. You'd have to build new factories for things that we just don't make here or don't make here in a cost-effective manner. So there's just some of those limitations. And, just from a business standpoint, there's things where some things it doesn't make sense to make it here, just because it's either cheaper elsewhere or, whatever the case is. So because also you have to keep in mind, a lot of these American vehicles, if they were 100% built in America, then that would also drive up their pricing elsewhere in the world. Like Ford sells the Mach-E, and the rest of Europe and stuff. If you had everything come from America, people were upset because like the Mach-E is built in Mexico, so was the Blazer EV and stuff. If you had everything coming from America, then that, makes it more expensive versus, some of these things. I think they can kind of, pull some lower things from other markets. And then, that makes it a little bit easier to, again, justify the price tag for other markets like Canada, where everything's more expensive. You don't do yourself any favors building it in America because only Americans appreciate a 100% American built vehicle. People in Europe don't care that the Mach-E is built in Mexico. Maybe they'd like it to be built in Europe, but then they're saying, well, why can't the Mach-E for Europe be built 100%, with European parts? There's those types of things as well. I know people, some people are upset, with Canadian production with Stellantis and stuff, so there's just a lot of those things of, again, putting yourself in the other country's shoes and then, being like, well, this is a great idea for America, but then what are you going to do for the other countries? And then, you can't logically, arrange these things, to be sourced in every home market of every place where you build things. So someone's going to be on the losing end of that stick. So instead, it's just like, let's just have a nice melting pot of this from this place, this from this place. Whoever can do the best stuff, the cheapest or whatever, that's what gets in there. And that's it, That's a great question. Thanks so much, Jordan, for asking. And Luke, thank you so much for another super chat as well. He says, when I was 11, I was at a Nissan dealer with my grandparents, and there was a red 350Z in the showroom. The guy wrote a contract I signed in red crayon. That's awesome. That's really fun. MD Can says the salesman deserved a raise there. I agree. That's really cool. Yeah, it's great when we have good salesmen. I know I do a lot of trash talking on dealerships for all their greed and markups and stuff. And there's certainly plenty of that. And it's unfortunately say majority of the experiences are probably like that. But there are a lot of really great salesmen out there. My brother-in-law is a car salesman. There's many other people I know that either were salesmen or, are salesmen. And there's a lot of good people. Obviously, there's still some sleazeballs and stuff as well, but there are a lot of good people that actually are, again, trying to help people find a car they'll love, just like me, and do deserve a pat on the back for that. And especially whenever it's people that are nice to kids and treating everyone nicely. That's always nice to see. Let me see. Back to the other member questions here. Get a drink here. Let me see. Good Stick says, now that Tesla has unveiled the robotaxi, I believe that soon they will not focus on the sport or fast vehicle market. We'll see. I guess Elon's promises are fairly hollow, but he is, I think, still hoping to do some type of new roadster, and he said he's got to do the stuff that makes money first before they do the fun stuff. But how long can they conceivably delay that vehicle? It's already been 5 years now, 6 maybe. I think it was in 2018 when the roadster was first revealed. It's just kind of, it's hard to say, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you're right, Good Stick, and it's just like, abandon the performance stuff and just go to autonomous pods. It's one of those things, I guess you can't blame him, because I think honestly everyone else is doing electric performance stuff from a dynamic standpoint better. I still think if you just want the fastest thing in a red light, Model 3 performance all day, every day, it's the best value out there. You get 3.5 seconds 0 to 60 for $45,000, something like that. You can't beat it. But aside from that, I think that trying to invest in enthusiast vehicles is probably just something they're not interested in anymore. And I don't blame them. It's a tough market, it's a tough way to have a car company. Double Strike, thanks for stopping by. He says, hey man, hope you're doing great. Been loving some of the new review videos. And on top of that, we're living in a world where we can catch skyscrapers with rocket engines on them as of today. I saw that little clip. That is very cool that SpaceX was able to catch whatever it was, the other booster part of the rocket they were able to catch. That's really, watching that was kind of one of those like sci-fi has become reality kind of things, of like all the countless movies we've watched of rockets, docking and landing and stuff. And they did it. SpaceX has had their blunders, so, it's not something I'm counting on them to do flawlessly every time, but it was really cool. Absolutely. And thanks for stopping by, Double Strike. And let me see. Where are we? So actually, Cars, thank you so much for being a member here for 4 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, my coworker is looking for another vehicle and is considering the Nissan Kicks. I told him about your review and some of your key points. Thanks so much. Absolutely. Thanks for letting him know about the review there. And again, anytime I'm have the opportunity to help anyone, and then you also are helping him, thanks to the videos there, that's awesome too. And it's we're all becoming more informed and able to help others around us. And I don't know about you guys, but I know, it's kind of fun being the car person, that sometimes if you don't have a lot of car friends or car family members, being the one that people can go to for advice and get good unbiased advice from us. And so it's, I know, again, some people would just watch the reviews just to get the info they need to get for the car they're looking at, and then they never watch again. But for those of us who, are regulars here and watch stuff, fairly consistently, I'm sure hopefully that helps you to be a little bit more informed in the car world here. And hopefully that does help you to, be, a great guide for the people around you. And that's another great perk of it as well. So thanks for chiming in with that, Cars. And if they have any questions about the kicks that weren't answered in the review and that you're not able to answer, feel free to, have them send me a message or whatever. I'm happy to help them out. And let me see. Back to the other member questions here. Rafi says, going from FK8 to DE5, I can 1,000,000% confirm buttons are the way to go, especially for climate. Nice. Yeah, that's definitely nice to have. And let me see. Danny says, caught on Route 18 in New Jersey. My dad and me and my brother almost got sideswiped by a bobtail semi because they decided to not take an exit last second. Yikes. That is crazy. Well, glad you're okay. And yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff out there. I had someone today just pull out in front of me and I had to slam on the brakes because they would have been T-boned by a giant Buick Enclave. They didn't even realize. I beeped the horn and they were like, oh, wait, you're there. I'm like, yep, I'm here in a giant SUV. Not sure how you missed that, but people are doing all kinds of crazy things all the time. Sean says, I've heard that on certain adult websites, people record themselves having relations and Teslas on autopilot. Scary to know that if I get killed by a Cybertruck, it might be because the driver was boning while driving. Yeah, I think there was a video. I thought it was because this was years ago. I think on Twitter where I think Elon actually retweeted one of them or something and was like, "Oh, this is." I don't know what he said. Probably that it's great or whatever. But because I think I remember. Yeah, that's the only reason why that rings a bell to me. That someone, I think, posted that on Twitter or something, and Elon was like, "Wow, this is a great use of autopilot," back before he cared about not incriminating himself on Twitter. But anyway, yeah, and I think someone told me this week that I haven't actually looked into it because I hadn't been too busy. But I think someone said that full self-driving now is hands-free with the software update this week. If that's the case, then public service announcement, watch out for Teslas. Just I'm warning you, that full self-driving tech, everything that I've seen, it is not ready for hands-free. And especially with the past abuses that other Tesla drivers have done with being overly confident with the system and doing all these various hijinks they've done, whether it's hopping in the back seat while the car is in motion or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff people do, but I mean, especially with Cybertrucks being so heavy, I give them a wide berth. And any Tesla, I always keep one eye on a Tesla whenever they're cruising next to me on the highway or whatever. I check them out. I'm like, does this person have their hands on the wheel? Are they actually paying attention? And that's something I don't have to worry about in other vehicles, because obviously there's, again, bad drivers that are distracted in all kinds of other vehicles as well. But at least those drivers don't think that their car will save them or that their car is driving itself. And full self-driving just is not good. I just saw a video last week of someone doing full self-driving and the Tesla pulled out onto a road into the oncoming lane and stayed there. It's these are basic things. We're not talking about oh, well, it's going over the line a little bit, cruising in the oncoming lane, this is fine. It's why is this being, approved for widespread use, and now it's going to be hands-free and give people further false confidence? Again, I'm sure there's lots of safe miles done in full self-driving. I'm sure it's done some good stuff, but it has killed people. It straight up has killed people. There's no way to beat around the bush. So it is something you have to, just be careful of, especially because, people just are misinformed that they think that they have something more than they have with full self-driving. not actually being that, or at least not being that well, if it is actually doing that now. But not a good system, in my opinion. Um, but anyway, I won't try and rant about Tesla too much tonight. But MD Can says, "Hey, I'm happy to spend my Sunday night just before bed. I just got back from a Sonic meet. Kraken was finally done. Everything is perfect, and I'm waiting the samples to wrap my red bronze. That's awesome. Glad that the Kraken's back together there, his Kona N, and that's cool. You did a Sonic meet. I love Sonic. Unfortunately, the one near us closed, and so now I got to drive like 30 minutes if I want to go to a Sonic, which it's probably worth it, but I mean, that's kind of a commitment for me considering I'm so used to everything being so close. But man, that's cool. You have to do a meet at Sonic. I remember a long time ago doing a couple of those. Good times. And so yeah, thought it was good. And let me see. I see TFI also says, MDKN, this is the only YouTube channel I have paid a membership for, or have a paid membership for. Literally have not spent $1 on Google products except for this. Well, I really appreciate you making an exception. I know Google definitely, has their problematic elements as well, but I really appreciate the support, and especially whenever, you're making that exception. It means a lot. So thank you so much, TFI. And Thanks for that. It means a lot. Aziz says, "What's a car that you once loved, but age has changed your opinion of it to a more negative light?" Well, kind of like I mentioned it with Miata not too long ago, just the low seating position. But that's a great question. As far as other stuff, I don't know. I mean, I think as I get older, I'm not in love with insanely loud exhaust anymore. I know, very unpopular opinion. But I even found myself in the last few months of the Bullet ownership, there were some times where I actually put it into quiet mode, which I didn't do for the first few years of ownership, unless I was like trying to like quietly sneak out of the house when my daughter was sleeping as a baby or whatever. But like, I found myself just being like, I'm in a busy area. I'm actually going to go into quiet mode because I don't want to attract that attention. I don't want to, be that guy with a loud muscle car. I mean, I can appreciate that and I enjoy it. I mean, actually, just yesterday, Shelby GT350R blew past, and it was a glorious sound. And I am very thankful that owner had his exhaust opened up, and I enjoyed it. And so I can appreciate that some people do appreciate that, like myself, whenever you do those loud flybys or whatever. But I know a lot of the population doesn't, or like my daughter doesn't enjoy loud exhaust. That's why we haven't gone to a single car show this year, because she doesn't like the revs and the loud straight pipe stuff that rolls into Cars and Coffee. And I mean, as a little kid, I can understand you're walking along and all of a sudden you have this like loud sound. It can be scary. We're trying to work on that. And I mean, she, was familiar with the Bullet and, daddy's loud car and all that stuff. But, it's just something that she doesn't enjoy. And so, like looking at it from her perspective, and, a lot of other people, whether it's dogs that get freaked out or whatever the case might be, there's just some of those things that for me, this is like why I love the Ioniq 5N, because that doesn't really do any exterior sounds, but I can literally have an Elantra N soundtrack crackling and popping as loud as I want and be my own obnoxious little, self concert that I can have of just like all the loud sounds, but no one hears it except for me. And I'm having a blast. And again, I'm not saying that's, something I recommend for everyone. It's just my personality type. Like, I'm more of an introvert. I don't really like, attracting attention to myself. And just, kind of just where I'm at, I guess, in life right now. That's just, I think the biggest thing is just, I used to be the one that was, revving all the time and, just being as loud as possible, as you saw with all the BRZ years and all that stuff. But just something that these days I'm like, you know what? Like, I like kind of, a nice sounding exhaust is great, but I don't love something that's like insanely loud, like ear bleed, just disturbing the peace everywhere I go. That's kind of the only thing I think that has been the biggest change for me from an enthusiast. And if you would have told me that 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, come on, you're so lame. But like, that's just kind of where I'm at right now in life as a dad. And just, I think also the way culture has kind of changed as well, I think. And also, again, just the age thing. But Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks for asking, Aziz. Raphael says, "Let's put everything in screens, then tell people not to drive distracted." And this makes sense. That's a very good point. Absolutely, very good point. And and this is why then it's like, well, let's add in the safety tech so you don't rear end people while you're playing around with your screen, and we give you lane keep assist so you can stay in your lane whenever you're playing with your screen. And it's yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's um yeah, it's one of those things. I'm happy I'm not a decision maker for a car company, because it's like, what do you do? Like, say you are in agreement with that statement, what do you do? Do you, go to a smaller screen? Do you throw screens out? Are you like Mazda, where you force people to use a controller? But even they have caved with the smartphone integration, and I think for the better. But it's like you get to a point where you're not competitive anymore because everyone else is doing it, and so you have to do it too, even if you don't love it. I think that was kind of how Mazda caved on the smartphone, touchscreen capability. I don't think they wanted to, but it's like, well, crap, everyone else is doing this, so I guess we'll make an exception for at least the smartphone thing, and kind of dragging their feet into it, but doing it finally. And yeah, I think some Mazda is a good example of like, controllers are the better way. And I think a lot of Mazda owners agree controllers are the better way. And a lot of German brands for a long time also said the same thing until they finally dropped their controllers. But like, people tried to, fight against the screens. I think the German companies, Mazda and a few others with controller wheels, they tried and tried and tried. And at the end of the day, people just wanted touch screens. And I think it's easier, it's more familiar to do that. There's less of a learning curve typically, but it is just more distracting. So that was the concession that had to be made for staying competitive. And that's one of the instances where everyone says, well, you got to follow the consumer. The consumer wants 15 mpg v8s. Well, then we should build 15 mpg v8s. And the touchscreens are another example of that. I think most people do want the screens, and it makes them feel high tech, and they like having an iPad to play around with, and so um, capitalism, we're following the trends, and unfortunately that's where it has led us. And I think again, there will be natural market corrections that say, okay, we're done with screens now, that fad is over, we're over this, give me back my climate controls or whatever. And I think there will be some of that. How much remains to be seen. But I think we will see kind of analog stuff come back to a certain extent. I think for some stuff, we're never going back to full analog because analog is more expensive. Putting two screens with how cheap these screens are, you can slap those two screens on there. And the companies, you can tell the companies that are really cost cutting are the ones who ditch the climate controls altogether and bury it all in the screen, like Ford. You save a bunch of money doing that, versus making plastic knobs and all the extra wiring and a place for them and all that. It's just all extra versus being like, hey, look, it's an open concept, which is a fancy way of saying there's nothing here, it's free. That's all marketing spin as far as a lot of that stuff goes. I mean, yes, you do get more interior space or whatever, but it is also like them. Yeah, well, empty space is free to give you, and so it's just that I think it's just a fad we're in right now for some of that stuff. But I think you will see higher end sports cars, things like that will slowly start to bring in the analog stuff, I think, more, and charge a premium for that. Be like, oh, you get upgraded to the analog gauges. Well, it's going to cost you $3,000 with Porsche, but if you really want them, we'll put real dials back in your gauge cluster. And that's like, that's I think what we will see eventually. I think Porsche still is already they're already kind of on the upward trend where they're at the peak screen where they go, okay, we finally ditched the tack. And so now it's all screens, and they'll stay there for a little while. And I think they'll go back to analog. I think Bugatti was a great example of not doing screens ever, because they said these are collectible vehicles that have to be able to be used in 50 years when they're on Pebble Beach or whatever. And so Veyron had no screen. Touchscreens were very popular even back then. Veyron said, no, we're not doing it. Chiron, has a little CarPlay integration in the gauge cluster, I believe, but that's pretty much it. And they're like, we're not doing it. Like, there's no center screen in a Bugatti Chiron. Now we have the Tourbillon, right? I think that's how you say that. And that I think now has like a swivel up, like removable kind of almost screen you can have in them. I think it's even an option. I don't know, but like all the basic stuff still is all controlled with analog stuff. And it's just, the analog gauges there in the Bugatti and stuff. I think they have the luxury of being able to do that, but I think they saw this come, and I actually heard this on the Smoking Tire podcast, so I'm kind of just repeating what they said, but they said like Bugatti saw this coming 20 years ago, and kudos to them and a round of applause that they were like, this is a bad trend. We're not going to go down this road. And they didn't. And they stuck to their guns. And they, again, had the luxury of being able to dictate what their customers were going to get because their customers were just going to pay whatever anyway. And, just wanted to, be invited to the party. And so Bugatti had that power. I think Ferrari is the same kind of company where they have that kind of power. If they wanted to, they're slowly starting to cave. We see that it's touchscreen in the 12 cylindry and stuff. But, they really haven't put a whole lot of screens in their, sports cars at least either. And so, it's another company where they can push back because people will buy the new Ferrari no matter what, because they want to get the special edition one and flip it for $1 million. And so, people will follow along and, follow Ferrari off the face of a cliff and, throw their money the whole way down because they want to be in the invite list to order the new special Ferrari. So, there's some of those companies that can do that, and maybe that will trickle down someday. Anyway, sorry for the long rants tonight and tangents. I'll try and get caught up here on all the member questions here before we sign off. But let me see. So where are we? MD Can says, yeah, Kraken's finally done. Intake, snorkel, and end badge are wired up to a switch that passes through the interior hood cable grommet because nothing else would work. Nice. That's cool. I had to do some of those little workarounds even back in the day on my Legacy GT Spec B with like the boost gauge. I wanted to put a boost gauge in it. I had to find a way to run, the wiring there through the firewall, through a grommet there to get it through into the steering column. So I remember those days of finding ways to make it work. MD Can says, I got a couple Z's running around my area. I follow a gray one on Instagram. Nice. Well, I'm glad at least someone's seeing them running around. Sean says, is it possible that the RSX will be a trim level for the Integra? Possibly the only way to get a coupe? I guess Integra RSX could be a thing, but I think for a trademark, they'd have to combine the two for it to, be able to be put on a car and be protected. So I feel like it's probably going to be separate for the two cars, but we can see. We'll see what happens. Or nothing at all could happen too. We'll have to just wait and see. And let me see. Where are we? Yavinder says, hey, Matt, happy Thanksgiving from Canada. I didn't realize it was a Canadian Thanksgiving today. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great day with family, or had a great day, as it's now almost 11 o'clock at night. Hope you had a great day with family, though. And yeah, I see TFI saying the same as well. And I hope all my Canadian friends have had a great day. And hopefully this doesn't interfere with family time here. I didn't even realize, honestly. Sorry, I'm out of the loop on Canadian holidays, unfortunately. But Canada is an awesome place. I'd love to come visit again sometime soon. And Yavinder says, I think you should work management for some car manufacturers with how great your ideas are. I appreciate that. It's hard to say if, they are actually great ideas. Because I think, it's very easy to be armchair product planner and the realities internally, I think, are what dictate a lot of this stuff for sure. And, again, every time I talk to a lot of these PR companies, I'm like, oh, it's like we're all on the same team. They all want to see the same stuff that I want to see, but there's holdups, for a variety of reasons. And, so that's the thing to keep in mind is a lot of these car companies do have enthusiasts, even, in high up positions, who would love to see, new S2000s, new, take your pick, whatever fun car you want to see come back. They'd love to see that. It's just they can't make the business case, or they don't have the means to do it anymore, or whatever the case is. It's just some of those things that unfortunately I'm sure it's probably even more painful, because if you know that you're the product planner for this company and yet you can't do what you want to do, that's got to be pretty torturous as well. But MD Cans says, I'm 24 and I feel the same way, Matt, about the random aches and pains. Well, I'm sorry you're experiencing it 10 years sooner than me, but yeah, it's funny. 33 was like when everything started feeling like it's hurting and strange feelings and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, man, like, why do I feel like I'm falling apart when I'm still pretty young, relatively speaking? But anyway, Two says, can we all just say Christine is just a Decepticon? I've never actually seen Christine the movie. I need to watch it sometime. But yeah, I think based on what I know about it, it's your line of thinking there is absolutely spot on. Um, and Austin says, "Hey Matt, watched your Hummer EV review. How can companies justify such low rent interiors in 100,000 plus vehicles?" I think they just say it's the performance. It's the I think with also the off-road thing, you can kind of get away with like, oh, well, this is rugged and durable, and that's a nice, easy way to pass off your hard plastics without people batting an eye. See the Jeep Wrangler, but I think with Hummer, like I said in the video, absolutely. I think they needed a Denali version or some luxurious version of that to justify those high price tags. But I mean, you do have to, I think what GM would tell you is, look at the hardware there. You got a double stack gigantic battery. You have four-wheel steer. You have these giant wheels and tires. You have 1,000 horsepower in the truck version, 800 or whatever in the SUV. I mean, it's a lot of power, a lot of battery. Those are all expensive things. And so it's kind of the same idea we use for performance cars of, does a Porsche Cayman give you, a worthy interior for $100,000 as well? I mean, certainly a Porsche is a very nice place to be, nicer than the Hummer, but you're paying for the performance. It goes for any of that stuff, Corvette, Mustang, whatever you want to take your pick. Mustang has the same screen as a Ford Escape, and the Mustang is potentially double the price or more, but you're paying for the performance. So I think that's unfortunately the justification there. I don't think it's as strong of a justification for Hummer, because I think with that you can, pull some stuff from Denali and throw it in there, and you're not really probably losing too much profit. But yeah, it is what it is. I think there's a market for it. If Hummer does sell, continue to sell well, it's kind of starting to get some momentum, it seems. Then they can open up some new trims, hopefully, and I would love to see them actually do a luxurious version for people who, just don't need it to be some rugged, crazy off-roader, So we'll see. I don't think the pop culture has kind of embraced it like they were expecting it to, because I think Cybertruck, especially these days, is kind of taking some of the limelight away from it, versus like Hummer H2 back in the day. All the rappers had them, and it was all the, cool people had Hummers for a while there. I don't think there's really been much of that, from Hollywood and stuff, really going for those. So I think there's some of that why they're just like, well, we're just going to appeal to off-roaders because, it doesn't seem like people are interested in the luxury touches in those. Maybe, I don't know. It might be a chicken and the egg thing too, where people aren't buying them because it's not luxurious enough. I don't know, but it's a good question for sure. Let me see. Austin says, also looks like Stellantis woes seem to be continuing, laying off 1,000 employees and CEO stepping down in 26, apparently. I did see that. That was another one that came in after I had already done the weekly update. But yeah, it sounds like I didn't fact check it yet to make sure it's all 100% legit, but it sounds like the CEO of Stellantis is stepping down once his contract is over there in January of 26. And so, I mean, I don't think anyone's really surprised about that. And I think, honestly, that's the start of healing for Stellantis. If, it truly is his doing for a lot of this stuff. I think there's a lot of the stuff that isn't entirely his doing, but he's got to be the fall guy anyway. But I think, bringing in some fresh, direction, with a new CEO will certainly, hopefully, only help things. We will see how it plays out. And Austin also says Fiesta ST indeed had the 1.6 EcoBoost. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad my memory isn't failing me there at least. And Luke says, don't be worried about being out of shape. Round is a shape too. That's true. Yep. And these days it's just the dad bod and just trying to keep up with life, unfortunately I don't have the free time to work out like I used to, but let me see. Mike says, Austin, it was already announced. Yeah, but they were looking for a new CEO. I remember them saying they were looking for a CEO, but that his contract would expire. But I didn't hear the part about not being renewed. So that is a new component, I think. That was a development here this past week. Sean says, getting old with bad knees is why I haven't lowered my Scion. Nice. Well, yeah, I can certainly understand that. And that's also why I have more sympathy. There's still so many people like, oh, if you don't have a manual, you're not a real enthusiast. Blah, blah, blah. All these people that are crazy to me. But I think that's why a lot of people don't recognize the physical limitations some people have. Just because you can't row your own gears doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to enjoy a car. And so, this is why I've always said it's great to have options. Give everyone the option for a manual or an automatic, and everything that it makes sense to offer, a manual. And I think there's no downside to that. And, again, the people that really want the manual will still get it, but it opens up, a lot of other people that are able to actually enjoy this stuff. And Shred Car Guy says, if we're talking about NA Miatas, I saw a clean one in green with leather interior earlier today. It's funny how small they are compared to any modern car. I know. And that's another one where it's like, you have to be brave to be driving an NA Miata in these days with everyone driving around in monster trucks. It is wild being in a Miata like that. Even an ND Miata. I talk about this a little bit in my review that's coming out here this month. Even ND Miata, it's like you're in a small car. It's not for someone who's risk averse, honestly, because it's small in these days that we're living in. Max says, Matt, this may be an odd one, but don't you think it's odd that you can get ventilated front seats plus heated rear seats in the Prius, but no dual zone climate control, especially considering 37,000? I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess it doesn't have dual zone climate. It's something I kind of just like breezed over. I think climate control, my justification for that is that dual zone climate in cars that are the size of a telephone booth, you can't have that much differentiation. Like, yes, if one person wants it freezing cold, the other one wants it really hot, the air blowing in their face can be whatever temperature they like, but the climate of the car is not going to vary. It's not like there's some magical wall between you and the other people to make it true dual zone. It's just blowing that kind of air at you, but that's it. So and a dual zone to me, not that it's been a gimmick, it's a nice thing to certainly have appreciated. And sometimes where, Beth is cold and I'm not, and she wants to, have her heat on or whatever. Like, it's nice to have that. But, I think there's limitations, and especially in small cars, those limitations are even more so. Versus seats are great because, that is personal to you. You can have yourself roasting, you can have yourself freezing cold. And that does a more direct, to me, I think seating is a better way to do dual zone climate, honestly, is your personal bodily climate can change more by that if it's done well, especially with the ventilated seats versus, having different air blowing out of the vents that eventually mingles in 3 seconds after it's, hit your face and, blends all together in the car anyway. So that would be my justification for that. Certainly it is still strange because just, again, dual zone is something people expect in most cars these days for sure. And I'm sure it's not something that's super hard for them to add in if they really hear a lot of demand for that in the future. I don't know, but that's my only defense I can give for that. But I'm not opposed to your thinking there. I agree. It would be nice to have dual zone, and it's strange you don't get that with all the other luxuries for sure. Let me see. TFI, thanks for giving some insight there on the Crossfire. And he says both are fun as heck. That's great. And let me see. I see. Thanks for answering the question there about the car that we have here at the Mach-E. And Good Six says, do you know if any companies are working on alternative self-driven transportation when self-driving cars are the main transportation method? Just wondering because you said companies plan years ahead. Yeah, there's a lot of companies working on that for sure. As far as, the self-driving stuff, but if you're talking about alternative, I think you mean like other self-driving automated systems. And in that case, yeah, there's Cadillac's been working on the next level of Super Cruise, which will be eyes off. Again, taking baby steps here, eyes off, hands off, is the next step that they're getting into. That, what was the other company recently just in the news? Oh, Mercedes, is doing that with the level 3 stuff. There's SAE level, 1, 2, 3. I think it goes 4 and 5 as far as how much automation you're having in the vehicles. And I know, there's really like the consensus outside of Tesla, at least, everyone else is saying we need to have LiDAR sensors here whenever we're going to these level 3 systems. Honda, they just said this past week, with their system being a level 3, which means eyes off, hands off, they said they're going to have LiDAR and their EVs that have that feature. So companies are planning for this and understanding, okay, people want to see this. this is something we're going to have, the systems needed to have the suppliers there to give you that LiDAR that you need, in their opinion, to do safe, full self-driving stuff. So that's absolutely what they're working on. We see EX90 from Volvo already has the LiDAR sensor there in the roof. It's kind of almost looks like a roof scoop, which is fun. But they have that, and so this is something that other companies are absolutely planning for, and LiDAR, all those sensors are going up, with their demand and all that, and I think we're just going to see more and more of that. So I think that's absolutely, companies are working on it for sure. Truck and Car Guy says Ford also had a hand in ruining the RX-8. I haven't heard that story. I didn't know Ford had anything to involve themselves with the RX-8. I thought that was kind of a separate thing, but I'd have to look into that. That's interesting. Nathaniel says, "Hey Matt, hope you're doing well. Does any of the Stellantis EVs look like something you'd be interested in after the Ford Wagoneer S, Jeep Recon, Charger, Chrysler crossover, or anything else?" Wagoneer is going to be too expensive for us. Recon is too hardcore GP, so that's no interest in that. Charger, if I were, it's going to be too expensive. Bottom line, they're all going to be too expensive. Maybe the Chrysler crossover will be a competitor to the Mach-E. So that's really the only one, depending on how they do that. The airflow thing, I was kind of, looking forward to seeing that come out and seeing what they did with that. And then they said they're ditching the airflow name, which, as a vintage lover, I was bummed about. But I'd love to see, what they do with that. I mean, they said that supposedly that concept has been thrown out, and now they're doing something completely fresh styling wise. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. So maybe the Chrysler potentially. I think all the others, though, because I mean, we're talking about a family car, so the Charger wouldn't really, be something for us. We still like having a little more practicality there, even though there's a huge hatch in the Charger. Just, I don't think Beth would go for a Charger, and I honestly don't even know if it would fit in our garage because they're so giant for the 4-door versions now. That's actually a legitimate question. I'm not sure if it might be too long for our garage, but so I don't think there's any of them currently. We will see if any other stuff down the road appeals to us. But honestly, with Stellantis' electrical issues, that I've personally experienced a lot of their stuff, it's going to take a little while for me to get my trust back in them to consider them as for a purchase. They're going to really have to get their quality control up to better standards mechanically, powertrain wise. Again, Pentastar V6, fantastic. The V8's fantastic. Mechanically, there's a lot of good stuff there. But, I've heard a lot of complaints about electronics with those things being wonky. Just driver assistance stuff like I had the issues with in the Ram. That was a pre-production truck. They said, production should be better. But I just literally, even this week, had someone say, I wish I would have seen this video sooner when my video about complaining about the 2025 Ram. They're like, I just bought 6 weeks ago. It's been in the shop the past 4 weeks. It's got a bunch of issues, blah, blah, blah. And they're regretting their purchase. Again, that's one anecdotal story. Maybe I'm sure there's thousands of people out there driving with no issues. So it's hard to say exactly, but I just know from the press cars I've driven, I'm a little iffy about Stellantis electronics right now. So for me, I wouldn't consider them for a purchase. That could change in the future, though. We'll see how they improve things. MD Can says, "Oh, Matt, went to a benefit car show for one of my friends who was unfortunately diagnosed with an incurable cancer. Kraken took home an award, even though I told him to give it to someone else." Man, that's tough. Sorry to hear about your friend. And hope they enjoy the rest of their time as best as they can, and that you can, really enjoy their time here. And I can't imagine. That's got to be brutal. So I'm sorry to hear that. And hopefully you can enjoy those car shows and all that as best you can. And it's been a rough year for quite a few people. I know I've had some other, subscribers also, say they've had some tough losses this year, and it's no fun. So you have my condolences, MD Can, on that. Let me see. B. Mitchell says C7s, especially the Z06 and Z01s, have really increased in value over the last year. Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, even base ones I think are great buys. Grand Sports are great. Some really good options there, even if the Z06s and Z01s are expensive. All right, we are over the 2-hour mark here, so I'm going to go for the last few member questions here and then wrap it up here. But Good Stick says a lot of Tesla drivers I see don't really care about cars. I've heard a lot of Tesla people saying they only bought the car because it's cheaper than gas. And that's a great reason to buy any EV. It is, cheaper to run. But yeah, especially these days, Teslas are very cheap as well. So that certainly helps sell a large amount of them, I think. And T-Track says, I just now saw a commercial for Ford Blue Cruise hands-free. Nice. Yeah, Blue Cruise keeps getting better and better too. It's doing really well. I see also Jonathan that says, I bought a Tesla before Elon bought Twitter, traded in my Mustang for it. Nice. Yeah, it is interesting, now, when I see Cybertrucks or I see the Highland Model 3s, there is a distinction now. There's like the pre recent Elon people that bought the Tesla probably before he became more polarizing, I guess is the way to say it. With those people that I've seen some bumper stickers, they're like, oh, I bought this before he went crazy. But now whenever I see the Highlands and the Cybertrucks, I'm like, some people can separate the two. It's kind of like the problematic artists or whatever, where it's like I'm separating the art from the artist, and some people can do that, and that's fine. But it's like with the Highlands and the Cybertrucks, every time I see one, I'm like, that person is fully on board with supporting Elon in his current state because they bought a new modern Tesla. And again, everyone has different opinions. That might be a great thing in your mind. It might be a terrible thing. I'm not going to weigh in on that any more than I already have, but it's kind of, you can pick them apart now, at least as far as those ones go. But it's, again, objectively, the Teslas, have been great cars. It's just a shame that there's this stigma around them now. It's really, I'd be so upset if I was an actual Tesla employee that, wasn't on board with everything that Elon did. Like it really sours the company. And I just really wish that Elon would move on from Tesla and go off and do whatever stuff he wants to do. And that's it, but don't drag Tesla down with it, because it hurts the company. And I think it's, again, a solid company with really smart, great people working there trying to just make good cars. And, having all this other crap heaped into it just sucks. But anyway, Nicholas says, hey, Matt, what do you think of Lexus, where Lexus is at currently? Their cars can seem far behind competition, but it looks like they will be #1 luxury brand in sales this year. Reputation paying off, I think. Yeah, and I think the reputation has always been a strong seller for them. I think that they just also have done very well at making what people want and meeting people where they're at. I mean, I think this is, the Toyota success story this year was all of a sudden everyone wanted hybrids, and Toyota was one of the best with hybrids, and has some of the best hybrid systems as well. Not only just the most widespread, but a really well done system, or systems, I should say, and that bleeds over into Lexus. A lot of luxury buyers are in the same boat. They're not ready for an EV, but they say, hey, look, now I can get this RX with a plug-in hybrid, or I can get a hybrid that's really good, or a performance hybrid with the RX 450 now. And then you have the TX, which TX was the Lexus that people have been begging for the past decade or more, of a large 3-row mid-sized crossover. They finally did it, and they did it very well, with it having a gigantic 3rd row, ton of space, great technology, good styling. And they just hit the ball out of the park with TX. Unfortunately, it's currently being held up with, there's this recall for the side passenger airbags. And once that's, fixed, then they're going to, keep selling them like hotcakes. But I think that Lexus and Toyota have just played 2024 basically perfectly. I don't think they could have played it any better, aside from maybe having a little bit more of an EV offering that's more compelling and more diverse, but aside from that, I mean, again, because EVs have cooled off this year, they have played it really perfectly. And so, yeah, it's great to see that they called it right, and it's good to see when a company has a success like that. And Spy Harpy says, I've had my Tesla Model 3 Performance for a year and a half. I always drive myself. I never use autopilot, and even the full self-driving when it was free for a month. I just like to be in control all the time. I agree. I also, yeah, us enthusiasts like driving our own cars here. And Model 3 Performance, again, I tested one many years ago when Sophion had one. It's a great car. And so, yeah, it's glad that, you're one of the responsible Tesla drivers out there. And I'm sure, again, there are lots that, are very responsible. It's just one of those things. Again, unfortunately, the marketing has been misleading, and it misled a lot of people, into driving in not very safe ways and relying on the system a little too much, I think. But Spiper also says, not a fan of loud exhaust, just loud fart cans, in my opinion. Yeah, just personal preference, but yeah, that's something personally I'm not looking to, do super loud exhaust and everything. But Ben says, is video editing difficult, or do you find it mostly just time consuming? Yeah, it's not really difficult. There's some times where it's a little bit of a pain, but that's my own fault. It's because of how fast I talk and how many filler words I use, and just the mistakes that I sometimes make when I'm talking. Those are the things I have to cut. And and it's tough to find good cut points sometimes. There's some of that can be a little bit more laborious, but a lot of it is just time consuming. It's just combing through the footage. And the difference between like me and Joe Rady, for example, who has said he can edit a car review in an hour or less. It's because all his videos, it's one or two shots, one or two angles, and there's very little b-roll, if any at all. And versus me, I'm like very heavy in the b-roll, and he has the luxury of having Lori to follow him around with a camera and show everything that he's talking about. And I don't really have that luxury. So for me, I gotta film close-ups and do all these little b-roll clips. So it's like, okay, I gotta find the b-roll clip for the backup camera and put that in here, and then I gotta find the one for the shifter, and then I gotta put that in there, and I gotta trim it so that it is timed just right. And it's a tedious process. So that's really the biggest problem. And I've tried playing around with AI things to try and do rough cuts for me, or try to intelligently do things, but there's just no AI that's that smart yet. I honestly, even finding a good human editor, you have to know cars, because if I'm talking about, well, like the 1.4 liter is different than the 1.8 liter, blah blah blah, like if they're not going to know, like, which one's which, and it's a whole thing. And I've talked to other YouTubers about this as well, where it's really hard to find a good editor that that's into cars, because you have to be an enthusiast to actually know how to edit these things well too. So there's some of that, but it's unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of having a cameraman. And if I do someday have that luxury, then I'll probably follow Joe and just do simpler stuff like that, because clearly it doesn't hurt his views. But it's just, for me, again, being a one-man crew, it makes it a lot more time consuming and tough. MBKN says, I've also been stretching the ends legs this past week, trying to find out how much power I'm making. So far, my tops are 300 wheel horsepower and 314 pound-feet of torque. Nice. That's pretty impressive. It's got to be so much fun, I'm sure. He says, got an intake, intercooler, and turbo inlet for the performance mods, and a blow-off valve for the oral aspect. Nice. Yeah, blow-off valves are so much fun. I love the one I had a 50/50 GFB on my Legacy GT back in the day. It was so much fun. Let me see. MBKN says, I feel like a bug, but a couple of weeks ago, I managed to pay the N off. It feels so good to have my first car payment fully paid off, a 4-year loan done in 1 year, 6 months. Good for you. That is awesome. That's a great accomplishment. I've never paid off a car that fast. Kudos to you. That is awesome. And yeah, I'm sure it feels great to not have that car payment. Good Six says, I think the reason why Tesla doesn't update their cars a lot is because they are focused on self-driving. So updating the cars would take money away from self-driving. These cars are for DAT collection. So yeah, I mean, as far as, yeah, I agree. It's, I think Tesla's kind of always viewed it as that, of like, this is a shell that is, has to look decent and stuff, but they've never focused on trying to keep up with styling and things like that. It's just been about, let's just make this thing cheaper. Let's make it more affordable. Let's, update the tech on the inside or whatever, and, do some of those creature comforts, but, not really chase the traditional car model of having a refresh every 3 to 4 years, and, new generation every 5 or 6, whatever the case might be. They're not interested in that. And, I think it has hurt them a little bit, but, I think they've been mostly doing okay, with that model. And Dave says, up here in Canada, the Hornet is finally getting discounted. The hybrid is 17 grand off, including 8,000 from the government. Yeah, with those, I'm guessing you're talking about the RT plug-in hybrid ones. Excuse me. Yeah, but he says still 42 grand though. Man, that's crazy. It's still 42. They're getting cheaper down here. I know there's a lot of them that are, yeah, discounted, 10 grand or more. I think around here they're like 8 grand off, but yeah, they're not selling very well, unfortunately. It's I don't know. I mean, now that they're cheaper, I hope that they do sell, because if they are truly like super cheap and undercut, all the other competitors, then it's like, well, the Hornet is definitely worth considering if you're, paying way less than all the competition, because you do get so much power. And it's a nice amount of tech and stuff. And I don't know. I think Hornet doesn't deserve all the crap that it's getting, but it's good that they're bringing the price down for sure. And Good Stick says, do you think car companies in the future will offer alternative human-driven vehicles in the future as self-driving cars will be common? Companies are probably already planning for that future. Gotcha. So maybe that's what you were referring to earlier. That's a good question. I think, I don't know. I really feel like companies are almost in like a holding pattern with self-driving stuff of like, is this actually going to be the future? Is this actually going to take off? Is it not? And it also comes down to the company you're talking about. You're talking about like a mainstream brand. They might be a little bit more interested in that kind of, do we do human-driven stuff or do we not? Versus, a Porsche or something like that, where it's like, well, of course everything's going to be human-driven. We're not going to have any self-driving stuff, and they're not even probably, interested in that stuff at all. So for some companies, it's a very easy decision, and they're not, thinking about that future. For other companies, it absolutely is something I'm sure they're thinking about. Example, Mustang. Ford thinking about 2030s Mustang. If we are in this, if cyber cab does happen to take off, and all these other advanced systems do take off, how much do they automate the driving experience in the Mustang? Do we do level 3 and do highway driving that's eyes off, hands off? Do Mustang buyers want that? Do they do a full self-driving Mustang, or do they go with the analog? Like, well, we're buying a V8 and a manual, and so we want to drive ourselves in the old school feel. I'm assuming that that's what Ford's going to do for the Mustang, but those are the things they're probably trying to discuss right now. If they do see, okay, crap, like this self-driving stuff is getting more and more popular, do we have to pivot and make this a Mustang branded thing and do it in a fun way, or is there something that we can just skip and kind of market it as like, oh, well, this is human driven and this is cooler for it? And I think it's just going to come down to a brand and marketing kind of standpoint for every company, and it's going to be a different answer for everybody, I think. That's a great question, though. I see Honda Man says, Matt, do you post any behind the scenes on your paid subscription? I do my upload schedule, so you'll know every month what's coming for that month as far as reviews goes. And I sometimes do a little bit of like behind the scenes stuff, but it's mostly just member car of the week. Whenever people send me their cars, I show off those. I do want to do more behind the scenes stuff. I have a couple videos on there. There's a bloopers reel that's members only for that video. There's also a tour of the shelves that I did last year. I should do an updated one because there is some more stuff on the shelves. I'm still working on the DeLorean Lego car with my daughter. So once that's finished, maybe then I will be mostly done with the shelf for now. So maybe I'll do another shelf tour then once that's finished. But a few little things. I do want to do more. It's just, again, because I'm so busy. If I do stuff, it has to be one take on my phone, quick, just again, no cuts, just kind of off the cuff kind of stuff for behind the scenes stuff. There's some stuff that's easier than others to do just because like I don't have anyone around to help film behind the scenes stuff while I'm filming a car review, or while I'm doing this or whatever, so there's some of those things where I'm a little limited. It'd be fun to do behind the scenes stuff for like the trips that I go on, but when I'm hanging out with my other YouTube buddies, like none of us want to have a camera in our face, so there's kind of a tricky thing of like we just kind of enjoy the offline element of that, so it's tough. I do want to find more ways to do behind the scenes stuff, and if there's anything you guys would like to suggest, I'm all ears. I'm always open to suggestions, and again, as long as it's something I can do in one take, happy to post as many member exclusive videos as you guys want to see. Again, as long as it's something that I can do as a one-man crew on my own. But I'd like to do more for sure. So let me know, Honda Man, if you have any other, insight there. But empty cans. To see you later, Matt. Gotta get to bed. To be up at 5. I hate working. Yeah, I gotta be up early tomorrow too. So I hear you on that. And Gitstick says good night, and I appreciate everyone stopping by here. Trying Car Guys says I've seen a few Hornets. The last time I drove past my local Dodge dealership, they still had a lot full of cars. That's the way my Dodge dealership looks as well. He says, I've seen Dodge dealership try to sell a Scat for 50 grand and up. You mean the RT for the Hornet? I'm not sure, but B. Mitchell said we're still waiting for some more junkyard tours. I agree. That is something I want to do as a live, because that would be way too long if I did that as just like a regular like upload. But as a live, then it's kind of, I think, a little bit more acceptable to be long, like these are, But yeah, I do want to get to that. I wanted to do it this fall because it's, I don't want to be running around when it's freezing cold outside. But yeah, I just, knowing what I know about my schedule, November isn't super crazy, so there's no way I'm going to be able to do it in October here. But November, early November, I'm hoping maybe, or middle of November, maybe I can try to do a junkyard live, because I do want to really try that. It's a phenomenal idea, and I'm excited about it because I personally just selfishly want to go walk the junkyard for my own gratification. And so I will do that, I promise, at some point here, hopefully this fall. We'll see. TFI says Thanksgiving junkyard live. Well, Thanksgiving's for the family, so I can't get away on Thanksgiving Day, but hopefully I can find some time in November to do that. But anyway, glad you guys enjoyed it. And I see Nicholas saying great show, so thanks so much. He says Scatback Charger people are still charging extra for those. That's crazy. But TFI says you don't turn your back on family. Absolutely, Vin Diesel, we do not. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching the live stream here. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Hope you have a great week. Stay tuned for lots of good stuff here coming on the channel here this week, and the rest of this month. I got some fun surprises. I do need to post an updated upload schedule here because I did switch it up here, and there's some things I think you guys will be excited to see here at the end of the month. So stay tuned for all that, and thank you again very much for hanging out here on a Sunday night, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.